Welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Joshua Diaz. Good to see you. Good to be here. Happy Saturday evening to you. I hope you've had a great weekend. I hope it does nothing but get better. We got a real treat for you tonight. If this is up your alley, which is up mine, I'll tell you that this is the epitome of true crime. Something that we're going to talk about tonight. A real monster, if you will. And who better to talk about monsters than the monster analyzer? And, oh, hey, Dr. Gary, what do you got there? Himself. Dr. Gary Brucato, forensic psychologist, author of The New Evil, Cold Case Foundation, and many other things. Also, a heavy contributor to the new Peacoks series, the Richard Ramirez, the NIGHT STALKER tapes.
Indeed. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. I was very proud of contributing to that series. The other psychologist on the show is Joni Johnston, who is wonderful. She is also on the Cold Case Foundation. So I hope we did them proud, with our appearance. And just maybe I'll summarize for people what the series is. It's pretty cool stuff. They found, I think it's something like 25 hours of tapes of Ramirez when he was on death row, talking in depth about his psychology, what motivated him, his horrendous crimes, dynamics, in relationships, etc. And this is a two-part series, about 2 hours grand total on Peacock, Oxygen True Crime, I think, And the idea is that they interviewed family of Ramirez, they interviewed family of victims, and they interviewed us experts, and we kind of patched together some new insights into this horrendous serial killer. I think people will find it fascinating. There were many things about it I loved. I loved the emphasis on the victims' families and the showing the ripple effect of these, even now, on these people and their families from the deaths of their loved ones. I thought that they really painted a picture of Ramirez where he wasn't just a kind of archetype of pure evil, but that he was much more confusing, because a lot of people cared about him and liked him, and some people were infatuated with him. Some people loathed him. Some people had a familial dynamic with him where they were shocked and disappointed. In other words, they showed the whole gamut from ways that he was a victim to ways that he was a monster, and tried to help the audience understand that to accurately understand him, you needed to look at all of that. And it makes people uncomfortable, right? Because it's easier to think that somebody is just a monster. And not an excuse. It just means that he's complicated, and I think that was really interesting. So there's a lot of things about it. I was really amazed by I'll
give a little intro here. Richard Ramirez, he was the Night Stalker, but who was an American serial killer and sex offender whose killing sprees occurred in the greater Los Angeles area and the San Francisco Bay Area.
From 84 to 85, if I remember.
84 to 85, yep. And he murdered at least 14 people during his various break-ins. And
God knows how many children were molested before.
I know. It's pretty unbelievable. His crimes were horrific. And he was convicted on 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. And the judge who upheld his death sentences remarked that his deeds exhibited cruelty, callousness, and viciousness beyond any human understanding. Ramirez also never expressed any remorse for his crimes. He died in June 17th, 2013. So, where all stories start, they start at childhood. And Richard Ramirez was an abused child.
well, it was a whole soup of problems. But do you want to show the trailer for the show?
Sure.
So
Yeah. Let's.
yeah.
Let me bring this trailer up here. So I'm gonna go ahead and play the trailer from Peacock, which, you know, all rights reserved, and they gave us permission. Thank you to Peacock for allowing that as well. Let me move us out of the way.
You're not going to make me out to look bad, are you? It's not a matter of looking bad. I am concerned with the truth.
There's no thrill like a good kill.
In the summer of '85, there was a serial killer randomly killing people.
The man Californians are calling the Night Stalker.
They caught my Uncle Richard a mile away from our house.
You don't understand me. I am young, good and evil. Satan is a stabilizing force in my life.
He has eyes that devour you.
He went from being the human being to the Night Stalker, the sex symbol.
I asked him, can you wave to me? He looks over and I'm like, oh my gosh, he actually did it.
There's some things that we never understand, and we may never have the answers to.
I saw somebody who was complete evil.
She earned the ultimate prize to be the bride of the Night Stalker.
You love this man with all my heart.
Do you think that evil can be reincarnated?
I hope so.
All right, and so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of it's pretty chilling, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
fantastic trailer. They did. Peacock does such fantastic work.
Oh yeah. Well, Amy, the director of the show, you know, she's particularly gifted, and it is a very beautiful looking show. The imagery is, you know, you can see the grit of these settings, the shadows, the kind of, you know, it gets under your skin. It's foreboding. It's really good stuff. I'm telling you, it's a great series. I love it. Yeah. And I've been on a lot of series, but I think this is one of them that I was most appreciative of in the end when I saw the finished product. But you know, I was thinking, Josh, that if people enjoy this discussion of an older offender, you know, in the pandemonium of the worst, right? Instead of just concentrating on contemporary true crime, if they're intrigued by insights into these kind of people from the past, maybe we could do this more, where we dig up interviews like on YouTube or whatever of these offenders talking, and then sort of pick them apart. Because this way it takes on a kind of a, you know, like masterclass quality, where we could have people on that have expertise in this, that can pick apart these conversations with these offenders that are recorded, you know, much in the vein of what they did on this Peacock series with these tapes, or on the other series of different Peacock, Violent Minds, Killers on Tape, where there were a whole bunch of tapes from Dr. Al Carlisle when he was writing.
And we're already getting good questions here. And that's something that I believe we will talk about as well.
Right. That's a whole other. You know, the other thing is, you know, Michael Stone, my mentor, my co-writer on The New Evil, you know, he had spoken a lot about Ramirez, and, you know, he sort of went out there and said that he didn't think that Ramirez was really a born psychopath. He thought of Ramirez as what might be called a secondary psychopath. Like, in other words, somebody who, through abuse and alteration of the brain and negative experiences, sort of took on psychopathic qualities in a way that almost, you know, and drugs, you know. And he felt that he had a kind of schizoid, detached personality that, when it was mingled with the psychopathy that he took on as personality trait, made him especially detached and callous, because he already wasn't a particularly warm and toasty person. And then when you have that kind of detachment in addition to the psychopathy, you could really get gruesome, right? Because it's almost like you have the detachment of a scientist that's like dissecting a frog, right? You think from that kind of, so it's important to understand what's meant, by that construct of what's called schizoid autistic detachment. It's nothing to do with autism and what people think it means. Schizoid autistic detachment is the word for when you've got a kind of cerebral, mechanical, unemotional attachment from your victims. So you're experimenting and sort of, taking bodies apart, torturing, whatever, but it's not so much about sadism as it is curiosity. And Ramirez is somebody who was like that. So, and we have to,
you had a lot of conversations with
Michael?
With Michael about Richard Ramirez, because you guys wrote about him in the book, your book, The New Evil. And if you haven't, I'm telling you, it's a fascinating read. You're going to have to leave the lights on, give yourself about 2 or 3 hours, shut it down before bed.
Pet a puppy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But the things that fascinate us in life are the things that we don't understand that well. And luckily there are people like you and Dr. Stone who help kind of guide us there. But at the same time, it's heavy stuff. It's very heavy stuff.
Yeah, it is. And, but like all these stories, I mean, the Ramirez story really begins in his childhood. Now, I don't know if you have footage that you found anywhere for Ramirez talking about his childhood. Do you have any of that, or should I just
see what I got? Let me see. I got an interview here. He didn't, that's what makes the Night Stalker tapes, the Peacock series so appealing, is because Richard Ramirez didn't give a lot of interviews publicly, like nationally televised interviews, like, a lot of people did. And if he did, he would cut them short a lot. He was very in his own kind of,
Well, it goes with the schizoid thing, right? To be detached. But I think by the time he got to jail, he turned into something of an inflated narcissist that was gobbling up a lot of attention, particularly from women. But I guess, let me just maybe summarize a little of what was going on with him as a kid, because, he was from a Mexican family, very Catholic, the kind of people that, for whom matters of faith are like as real as the walls, right? Like as hard and real as the walls. I mean, there was no denying them in that family. So you've got a picture that there's already, like, in the culture, a kind of spiritualism, right? This is somebody who, from the time he was a little boy, would have been very exposed to ideas about the devil and God and so forth in a very, day-to-day way, right? Very, very spiritual way. And the father was a drinker, reportedly was a drinker, and was abusive, explosive and abusive, reportedly with the wife, with Richie, Richard when he was a little kid. And, he, in addition, he had gotten hurt a whole bunch of times. Even before he was like 10 years old, he had nearly died a few times from like pretty serious head injuries.
Yeah, he had brain damage, didn't he?
Well, he had temporal lobe epilepsy, which followed an injury that he had where a huge dresser fell on his head as a little boy. There was one incident where he was jumped from a train and got, he had gotten multiple injuries to the head, and which is important in terms of disinhibition and all that. He's only I think 10 years old when he starts using marijuana. At one point, he gets so detached from the abuse at home that he starts sleeping in the cemetery. I even comment on this show that, the dead are not going to fly off the handle and hurt you, right? The dead are more predictable than
what are the dangers
in that household, right?
Drug use that young, and because there's a lot of people that say, well, it's marijuana, but there is a very troubling study that's been done about adolescence and marijuana.
I studied it in my own work. I've studied that.
Yeah, and it has to do with the frontal cortex, correct? Like when it's not developed, and you're using, if you're using altering drugs at such a young age, what does that do? What would that do to somebody like?
It's a little complicated, but the simplest answer I'll give is that, if like 10,000 people smoked marijuana, like 9,999 might have nothing happen to them except that they had some goofy laughing and like got hungry or whatever. But there are those people that are sort of congenitally inclined towards psychotic disorders and certain things where there's the possibility that it speeds up the process. Both head injuries and marijuana can be precipitants in people that have underlying congenital risk. And if you are somebody who is pre-adulthood, that's when it's the most dangerous, because you've got a brain that's not completely formed, right? I mean, the idea is you want to sort of get through your pruning and your final changes in your brain and then sort of lock in, and then there's less of a risk as we understand it. But when you're a kid, a teenager, I have to tell you, irrespective of what they tell you out there about the supposed safety, there are some people out there for whom it is risky, in my opinion, my measured research-based opinion. And and the other thing is, in addition to abuse and brain damage, I mean, his mother had been employed in a boot factory when she was pregnant with him, and she was inhaling all kinds of toxic fumes. We don't know how that affected the developing brain either. So he had like a whole kind of soup of issues going on. And people are saying there's no sound, Josh. I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yeah, that's the only person to say that. Sometimes they do that just to be a...
Well, if I hear you and you hear me,
people can hear.
I shall cut our show in three as a. But I think that in that part of his life, you could experience a kind of pity for the difficulties that he was experiencing. And the key, I think, the psychological key, is to understand that he was in very sore need of a father figure. I think a mother figure, this is going to figure into his story as we go along, a mother figure who sort of made up for the dad and loved him unconditionally and was present for him and fought for him. We're going to see that gets kind of fed later on when he meets Doreen, right, the woman that he marries in jail. And with the father figure, you can see that first he goes to his cousin Miguel. We're going to talk about him right now, and then eventually to Satan, who's the father figure that he even said in the recording that you just showed on the Peacock trailer that Satan was a stabilizing force for him, right? And I've always said that about him. We talked about that in The New Evil, and then there it was on the tape. I felt very vindicated by that, because it was very clear to me that it was a hunt for a paternal archetype, right, a father figure. And but who is Miguel? Miguel is a cousin of his that comes home from the Vietnam War and the Vietnam conflict, I should say. And he, he was pretty gruesome. He was exposing Richie to things like body parts that he had kept as trophies from SA and mutilation of Vietnamese women. He would teach him how to stealthily creep up on somebody and ambush them, teaching him about all that stuff. And he starts, even at a young age, he starts learning, learning about and studying things like how to break into people's houses and rob and so forth, because, people that haven't had much given to them start to feel they have to go out and take it themselves, And, what starts to happen is, as he's using more and more drugs in adolescence, and he starts with the break-ins and all that, he starts getting a sense of power that comes from, like, moving stuff around in a person's house without them knowing it. Eventually, what we're going to see is he even likes to just stand there and look at somebody sleeping. Now, you have to really pause and imagine that. Imagine that, let's say you're a young woman and you're sleeping in bed, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you toss a little bit, you sort of squeeze into your pillow, you feel really comfortable, whatever. And little do you know that while you're doing that, in the shadows in the doorway, let's say, is a man who has broken into the house and is feeling dominance over you because you have no idea that he's watching you, and could, if he wanted to, pounce on you and kill you. Later, he starts to do that, to kill sleeping people. But just imagine the power that he would have felt with those early trespass crimes. I mean, if you really think about it, it's scary stuff, right?
It's absolutely terrifying because
yeah,
how many times have you went and checked a window that was, you thought you locked it, but it wasn't locked, and somebody could easily just climb through there. That's why it is so important, and we'll say this over and over again, and we'll talk about this here as well. I mean, they warn people, make sure everything is secure, as secure as you can be, because there are people like this out there, and it's terrifying to think that, but it's true.
Right. I mean, and think of the symbolism of a person who never had a stable home and the envy that he would have had of people who did, right? And the idea of going into people's houses and just saying, like, what does it look like when you sleep peacefully? What does it look like when there's food in the fridge and people aren't beating each other and there's quiet time, and you picture him almost studying it, sitting in the dark and studying it. And, it's a frightening image and a kind of lonely image, right? Like the kid outside the window at Christmas who's poor, seeing the little train go around the tree, and thinking, that's not for me, right? So there's that kind of mixture of the loathsome and the lonely that you see in him. And what starts to happen is that as he descends into polysubstance use, and all this, we find that we learn in this show that he is sexually abusing a niece. And she says in the series that, very powerfully, she gives testimony to it, that he stops because it gets caught, like brought to the attention of the family, and like a week later he goes out and kills the first victim, who is a child. They didn't know that for a long time, but it was found through DNA. The last victim discovered was the first killed, who was a child, and a very young girl, that he assaulted and killed. And the idea is that seemed to be how he started. So it was a combination of the breaking and entering, the robbing, and then the being interested in kids. And one of the things they talk about in this series that I found very powerful is that they didn't wind up prosecuting the child cases that were starting to mount up in terms of touching and so forth, right? Because they already had secured, had secured the adult cases, and it was a death penalty thing. He was already, convicted, the whole thing. So it wasn't prosecuted because they didn't want to put these kids on the stand, that these kids who had survived assault, so that we don't think of Ramirez as somebody who started that way, right? And but like we kind of have to, so that there's this graduation, so to speak, right, from a kid who was abused, right, to now feeling domination, control, power, projecting that powerlessness onto kids, right? And I don't know of him having been essayed, right? I know of him having been beaten and so forth, but that's the idea. So you want to start thinking about him as systematically being transformed into a kind of a callous, detached, drug-fueled, fantasy-fueled guy who's now trying to get this sense of power from breaking in, touching, child victims, and then he progresses to killing this child, and then goes on this kind of rampage of randomly, kind of like a preternatural figure popping up out of nowhere, anywhere he feels like it, looking for vulnerabilities in people's houses, doing things like, going through where you have the air conditioner in the window, looking for an open front door. And the pattern is just all over the place. It's like adults, elderly adults, couples where, it's very Oedipal because like he like rapidly shoots the husband and then like assaults the wife. And we start seeing this thing of kind of forcing people to vow allegiance to Satan as he's kind of identifying as a Satanist more and more, and seeing Satan as a father figure, and writing pentagrams on the wall, so it just gets more. And what he does to the people, I mean, I can't talk about it in detail here, it's just too disturbing. But we're talking about things like, in one instance, ripping a clock radio out of the wall and like kind of using the wires to jolt a victim, stomping a victim to death so that a sneaker print was lifted off of her face, taking an octogenarian in a wheelchair and like turning the wheelchair over, essaying the person, and then like beating them to death. And it goes on and on and on, so that it just gets more and more horrifying. Eventually, what winds up happening is that his infamy builds. He's all over the newspapers, and these people, these women, Spanish-speaking women, I think Mexican women in a bodega somewhere, see him on the front page of the newspaper and then like turn their heads, and there he is. They start screaming, "The monster! The monster!" And some men basically beat him to an inch of his life. And there's that footage of him with the bandages all over his head. He gets arrested. And then from then on, it's like this descent into showmanship. He just like hardcore embraces this image of himself, this romanticized image of himself as a kind of vampiric monster, sexy monster figure. He was very in love with that imagery. This is somebody who very much liked being seen as a figure of evil. He loved it. He wanted to be seen that way. And, he starts getting advice like, listen, play it up, wear cool clothes, wear dark glasses, wear leather, stop being, so geeky, embrace your coolness now, and all these people start developing these hybristophilic obsessions with him. And the series does a really good job of showing this, of like these women coming to the gallery, like defending him being a flirt, including with a victim's granddaughter, which which is very disturbing. I think it was granddaughter, not daughter, but I want to double check it because she was like 18 at the time. And there's, he's getting letters, he's getting women that are coming to the jail and pleasuring themselves in front of the bars. He's getting talked about like he's some sort of pop icon, like he's sexy, and then he winds up getting into this particular dynamic with this woman named Doreen, who becomes like the mom he never had. She's like a virginal, 1950s leftover, like Donna Reed style kind of maternal figure. And, he has this special thing with her, and he marries her when he's ultimately convicted and in jail. They were going through a divorce at the time he dies of basically cancer.
Lymphoma.
Yeah. And, he was on death row a long time by then, but they were going through a divorce, and they have this footage of her on like about to be married and talking about their relationship. I was blown away by that. So, he's really an interesting guy. I mean, that's the kind of summary of his life, but you could take one crime committed by the Night Stalker and talk about it for days because they're just so random and so gruesome. But I think if we could hear him talk, not from the Peacock series, but just what's on the internet, I think it would be really valuable. Ugh, look at him. He had very bad halitosis and teeth that were kind of fashioned only by chance and gravity, that kind of thing, like stalactite and stalagmite-like kind of teeth. And people described him that way. Survivors talked about that odor of him coming near you and talking at you with these very scary teeth, and that smell that they remember. It must be part of PTSD for people, I would imagine, if any of them have it. The other thing, well, I'll get to it in a second. Let me see what he says. But you can see, look at his long hair and his kind of, he's Doreen, by the way, worked for Tiger Beat, and she was like associated with people like John Stamos and people like that. You can kind of see it in Ramirez that he starts embracing that kind of 80s pop look, with the
it's Van Halen, AC/DC, like rock star, leather jacket, crap, sunglasses.
Yeah,
and, you can see right here, you can just kind of see the glee in his eye, because I'm sure that whoever's doing this interview, and I don't know who it is, but this was in 1993. He didn't do that's, like I said, that's why the Peacock series is so fascinating, because he doesn't talk a lot. I mean, he does little interviews, and he tries to be, he tries to sort of be just this like kind of figure, the shadowy figure, but let's listen to just a little bit of and hear him talk.
What do you want the world to know about you?
The world has been fed many lies about me. I have read very few truths.
Who are you?
You can already tell he wants to be like this, like philosophical. Who are you? When the answer is probably, I mean, I wouldn't say, like, you're correct. He's not as deep as he portrays himself.
Just a guy. Just a guy. And that is all I care to say, really. They are open-minded people.
And it was here, in a cramped room in a San Francisco jail.
Did you kill 13 people?
It would be improper for me to comment on my LA convictions and on my pending case here in San Francisco.
Why?
Because of my appeals.
Are you appealing these because you say you're innocent? You didn't kill 13 people?
That is correct.
You didn't kill 13 people?
Again, it would be improper for me to comment in any regard to that question.
You have now entered a very rare group of people in this country. You're in the ranks of Charlie Manson, Ted Bundy. You claim you didn't commit these murders, but you're right in there now as far as everybody else is concerned.
Serial killers do on a small scale what governments do on a large one. They are a problem.
It's just like the anti-government talk again,
Product of the times, and these are bloodthirsty times. Even psychopaths have emotions if you dig deep enough, but then again, maybe they don't.
Do you have emotions, Richard?
No comment.
Tell me what kind of emotions you got going through you right now.
I'll tell you what, I gave up on love and happiness a long time ago.
Why?
I don't care to explain that. Let the quote stand for itself. People in this day and age are brainwashed and programmed like a computer at being nothing more than puppets. This nation, this country is founded in violence. Violent delights tend to have violent ends. Madness is something rare in individuals, but in groups, people, and ages, it is a rule. Killing is killing, whether done for duty, profit, or fun. Men murdered themselves into this democracy.
You're good at reading your script, Richard, but you're not much at answering my direct question.
That was quite a call out, huh?
A lot was made that you're a devil worshiper. Do you worship the devil? Have you ever studied Satanism?
There are different sects of Satanism.
Have you studied, just yes or no, have you studied Satanism?
Yes, I have.
Are you a worshiper of the devil?
No comment.
Come on, Richard.
I can tell you a little bit about Satanism.
Well, I'm interested in hearing what you got to say then.
It is undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. It is power without charity. A Satanist admits to being evil.
Do you admit to being evil, Richard?
We are all evil in some form or another, are we not?
I'm asking you the questions, my friend.
Yes, I am evil. Not 100%, but I am evil. Evil has always existed. The perfect world most people seek shall never come to pass, and it's going to get worse. The great epochs of our life is when we gain the courage to rebaptize our evil qualities as being our best qualities.
The interview draws to a close.
And that's it. Thank you.
Photographs outside the room,
Shut the
gentlemen.
camera.
What do you want the world to know?
So, you know, that, I mean, there's not much to it here, but here's a question here. And Ginger, thank you so much. I'm wondering what Dr. Gary thinks about Bill, I don't know, Noguera's experience. Being housed with Ramirez. I don't know if Bill was mentioned in the Peacock series, as I've not watched it yet. Thanks, Josh and Dr. Gary.
No, I don't recall that he is. I believe what's being referred to by Ginger is a person who was on death row and was able to interview and get to know other offenders. And, you know, so the kind of person who spends their time trying to do something that may do something for the science of this, right? Because they're collecting this data, this information. But I've never seen what he learned from conversations with Ramirez. So it would be impossible to answer that. But the idea of collecting the information is certainly valuable, you know, and I wish there were more to say about that, but it is extremely interesting. I'd love to get my hands on it, because think of all the offenders that were housed in that same place, right? But I think this thing that we just heard was very interesting, because what it suggests to you is a person who is almost going out of his way to try to present himself as invulnerable to needing love and affection, because now he has cloaked himself in the cynical attitude that we are all basically fundamentally evil, and I just admit it and you don't. This is, of course, in theology what we would call despair, because from theological terms, this means that this person has missed the point of redemption, right? It's like getting so caught up in the concept of original sin that you miss the notion of original innocence, right? That ultimately, you know, the whole point is that people are in a fallen state and can be redeemed. That's the whole joy of it. I mean, with Christmas time around the corner, I mean, isn't that the point, right? That picking yourself up from the mud in life is the stuff of saints and heroes, right? And of course, realizing who really does the picking up. Right. And I think that for this guy, you know, love had burned him, you know, and yet he falls in love, he takes a wife, he has friends, etc. Because at the end of the day, you know how love is. Love is like, it's like if you have a plant that's in the wrong soil and then you repot it in the right soil, it thrives. You know, when people who have never been loved get a little taste of it, they do take to it. And, you know, and I think he did in his own disturbed way, appreciate that. Because, you know, that's what I think Michael Stone meant about him being a kind of secondary psychopath.
Well,
if he had been loved, you know, he might have gone a different direction. In
really
life.
quick, you know, preparing for the show, I went and I read the Wikipedia, and Dr. Stone is mentioned in his Wikipedia,
of course,
and where he says that instead of born, he was made, and sort of that's kind of what you're alluding to there, is that, you know, kind of nurturing and love really do go a long way with children as you know, they grow.
With some of these guys, some of them we think have some authentic, bona fide, you know, brain abnormalities or congenital things that may predispose them to be kind of sensation seeking and fearless and arrogant and whatever. But it may be that if they are loved with that brain, they would do something pro-social. They would become the kind of person that would like hurl themselves in front of a bullet to save people because they're unafraid and bold. And so, but if they're treated badly, they would twist in the other direction, right? Yes, that's true with the supposedly, you know, helping him learn how to burglarize and everything else.
Misty Dawn, new lab rat. I appreciate that. Thank you. Let me see here. You know, I'm closing in. We're closing in here on 35,000 subscribers, which is a really cool. It's fantastic. And you've been a part of that, especially this last year, Dr. Gary. And I wanted to thank you for that. And like I said, I received your Christmas card and it was very, very kind. Thank you very much.
So you have like 1/100th of the fans of that Luigi Mangione has.
Yeah.
You know, keep it up. You know, maybe you'll be as wildly popular.
I'm not that mad at the healthcare system right now, but I mean, I've been disappointed before, definitely, by insurance companies, no question.
I'm not getting into that guy. That's that we're not doing. But
no problem there.
but I think that there are a lot of interesting threads in that thing we just heard, that little interview we just heard, because, you know, first of all, you do see the way that this guy steers everything. You see the control, the domination, so forth, where he's moving you where he wants to go in the conversation. But then what happens is, if the person that's talking to him puts on a poker face and basically says, well, I don't care, we don't have to talk, you know, then what you see Richie does is he teases you to try to pull you back, right? Because ultimately his attachments were messed up, right? So it's this thing of like, I'm detached and disinterested, but like, don't go. I want to own you forever, right? And that theme also comes up with some of these killers. I really do believe, and this is one of the things I'm talking about in the new book, is that it's very important to think about serial killers as not so much post-pubescent, sexually driven offenders all the time, but to think about the earlier stuff, the attachment problems, and how doing things like keeping trophies and, you know, photographs and always knowing where the person is buried and visiting the grave and all those things, stalking them, is a kind of rendering people predictable so that they're not leaving you anymore. You always know that when Gary Heidnik talked about keeping women in a pit, it was so that he could sire a line of totally loyal children, because he was tired of losing kids from relationships and having them taken away by the state and losing the women in his life. So he would keep them in a pit, right? Well, with this guy, I mean, think, for example, when he kills the Zazatas, he misses Zazata's eyes. He takes them out and he takes them to a hotel and he just sits and looks at them, her eyeballs, right? And is staring at them and into them. And think about the possession he must have felt, right? And it's very important. So it's very
Dahmer comes to mind as well.
Dahmer cut what?
Dahmer comes to mind. Jeffrey Dahmer comes to mind when it comes to trying to, you know, because it was the, you know, I don't want you to leave me, and he had all these.
Right. That's why he would. That's why he would eat people or try to make them
a zombie, lobotomy style or whatever, you know, all the disgusting things that he would do to people. But yes, a lot of that is power to these people, you know, your mind forever. And a lot of that I feel is as though even when, you know, you take somebody's life like that, they hold on to that forever. Like that's theirs. You know, they sit in their cell with that. They relive those memories, and it's disgusting, but that's how a lot of these people operate, I would assume.
Right. Well, think about how he became a predictable object for people that fell in love with him, because he, you know, in hybristophilia, when you fall in love with someone who has committed crimes or whatever, think about the notion that you're never going anywhere. You're always in the cell, right? They always know where you are. You're not having a relationship with another woman. You're totally predictable in that regard. You're going to, you know, elevate the status of the woman who is involved with you. You may be somebody who's been abused yourself, so you're drawn to the violent. You may think, wow, I've tamed one. Now I've got the guy who can't do anything because he's in the cage, right? Or it could be that you like that you're the one that he isn't horrible to. Or it may be the narcissism of wanting to be associated in history with the offender. By the way, there was something the reporter said in that interview that bugged me when he said to Ramirez that he had joined the ranks of people like Manson and Bundy, because Manson is not a serial killer.
Spree killer, correct?
I mean, it isn't even clear. I mean, it supposedly killed 2 people, but did not kill anyone in the infamous crimes that everyone associates with the family.
Oh,
right?
no.
I mean, by a concurrent definition, where you just have to, you kill 2 people separated in time by a cooling off period, he might be called a serial killer if you accept that he killed 2 people. But the famous canonical Manson family victims, he didn't kill them. He directed people to do them. And, and that's a little weird. Like, he doesn't really belong.
So we just listened to this. Can we break it down a little bit?
Do we what?
Can we break this down a little bit?
Play a little more of them.
Yeah. Let's see here.
But it's so disturbing to watch him. You see those eyes. Everybody always talked about those eyes, that they were captivating, and
it's disgusting.
I don't see the pop star attraction thing. I don't see it. To me, he looks like a guy that, like, if he was sitting next to you on the bus, like, you'd move.
Yeah, no question.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's like the test for me. Do you sit next to the person? Do you move to the other side of the car and or do you leave the train car or the bus completely? Like, that tells you how creepy somebody is, right? And this is the kind of guy, I'd move to the other side at least.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely unsavory,
and he looks kind of unbathed and kind of creepy. Yeah, but yeah, play a little something else.
That's because he is unbathed.
Yeah, here he's got a little bit more of that thing going on, with the menudo hairdo and the,
Okay, Mikhail, hi.
What kind of a person are you?
Kind of person would I describe myself to be?
That's
I don't know. Just an ordinary person. But then again, there's Jekyll and Hyde to me.
I mean, there's nothing ordinary about him. I mean, nothing. I mean, he this is the second time, when he said, well, I'm just a guy. That's not true. He's not just a guy. I mean, he is a pedophile, an essayer, a murderer, a vandal, a stalker, a monster. But, I think, and maybe I'm off on this, and this is just me just thinking, but this whole Satanistic thing, I think a lot of people hide behind that, as, well, that's why I'm the way that I am, because I worship, Satan. I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, is that just a cloak or what?
I mean, he embraced a lot of ideas that have a Nietzschean quality to them. The idea that you should reject the notion that comes from, the Christian ethic, right? That smallness and bearing your cross patiently and humility are important, and that you should accept your suffering. The Nietzschean idea is that, God is dead and now there's only the Superman, and that you reject the idea of the cross and humility, and you go out and you just do what you want because you admit that you're human and that you want to. And remember that Nietzsche started out as Christian. He used to write love poems to the crucified Jesus. And there was an incident I heard about once, although I've never seen it in any biography of him, but I heard someone who was an expert on Nietzsche talk about this incident, that Nietzsche was playing the piano one day because he was a good pianist, and there was a crucifix on the wall, and during the performance he sort of lost his mind and he started bashing the keys and hitting his head against the piano and screaming at the crucifix that there was no room in his budding philosophy for this idea of honoring somebody who was allowing himself to suffer and die. And so the idea is there's no more room for that. It's time to be the Superman and accept that, you know, you should embrace every kind of animal impulse you have. And
yeah, he's kind of a fake,
and I think you see that. Yeah.
Like a fake Antoine LaVey, you know, like, you know, if you've ever listened to Antoine LaVey at all, and unfortunately I have some, because some of the cases that I've covered over the years, they're people that are, you know, into him, and then the Mega Beast 666, Aleister Crowley, all those.
Right. But a lot of those people turned away from Satanism ultimately, as you'll see in the series. Right. They interviewed a couple of them, but you know, it's a philosophy that I think for some people. Now, look, I'm not going to get into general opinions of people who identify certain ways, because to them this is a belief system, right? I'm not going to, but I think for him, for this guy, there was a little bit of a kind of, how shall we say, using it to give scope and meaning to things that he was sort of already doing and feeling, because he was angry and had done a lot of horrible things. It's only people who, you know, were able to see him through that philosophical lens that could say, you're not such a bad guy. You know, you did all these horrible things, but you're not such a bad guy, without him having to repent. Right. Yeah. So like to be seen as kind of human, you either had to see him as a victim who was totally misunderstood, or someone who was in jail unfairly, you know, or you'd have to say through the lens of this, you know, you were just living your life and living out your truth, and you know that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, their whole philosophy is that, like, you know, if you go by the Bible, you are suppressing every human instinct that you have. You know, all the good things that bring you joy, you're supposed to deprive yourself. I'm not saying that that's the truth, but that's the way that a lot of, you know, smoking and or, you know, drugs and sex and whatever it is, you know, that, you know,
a very indulgent guy, you know,
right. It's a free for all type situation.
Right. Yeah. So, well, you know, but you have to remember that this guy would have seen himself as entitled because he had been cheated. And, you know, he had been cheated. And, you know, there's a, you know, I'm very fond of William Blake. People may know of him because he's referenced in the Thomas Harris book, Red Dragon, you know, the like prequel to The Silence of the Lambs, right? And because the Red Dragon is based on an image that Blake painted of the Red Dragon, and there's a line in Auguries of Innocence that says, "A robin redbreast in a cage puts all heaven in a rage." And what did Blake mean by that? Well, he was talking about that when something is created pure and innocent and it gets ruined by people, that God is furious about it, right? That, in other words, like, you shouldn't ruin innocence. Like, a bird doesn't belong in a cage and a child shouldn't be abused, you know, kind of a thing. But of course, it takes on a double meaning when he winds up in a jail cell and he feels like he shouldn't be there, right? So it's like this whole thing of, like, you know, he was looking for permanence, he was looking for a home, he sure got one, right? You know, in the end. But you have to understand that center of him being that pathetic quality of, you know, something's wrong with my brain, I'm different than other people, I'm kind of detached, I feel more at home with the dead. It doesn't horrify me to look at gruesome things. Now, the other thing we didn't even mention was that one of the culminating events in his adolescence was seeing his cousin kill his cousin's wife, shot her during an argument. And, you know, and this guy would have seen that as very arousing and exciting. You know, the bullet flying at the person, gore, blood everywhere. What do we do? Let's, you know, how do we make the, you know, get away with this, whatever. You could just imagine that there was something wrong with the sort of combination of, you know, budding pubescence, right? And this guy's domination and control needs, his desire to level the playing field, his aggression, his confusion, drugs, the whole thing coming together in that moment, right? Culminating in that moment. But look at his little smirk here. You almost get the feeling he's flirting with this reporter. He was an enormous flirt. once he was in that courtroom it was just unbelievable. Like,
yeah, you saw on that trailer when she's like, wave to me, and she's like, he waved to me, and it's like, cool.
You know, that's Eva O, I think her name was, the rock star who developed a correspondence with him. She would write to him and say, like, wave at me, and they talk about that in the series. But let me hear a little bit more of this.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. Next
in
question.
my talks with you, you gave me the formula for the serial kill.
Yes, I believe a serial killer comes about by circumstances, and it is like a recipe. Poverty, drugs, child abuse, a few other things that I can't recall right now, but I believe that these things, contribute to a person, to a person's frustration and anger, and at some point in life, he explodes. Evil is.
I mean, that's about as truthful of an answer as he's given. That
But it's a contradiction. It's a contradiction with the notion that we're all that way, and he's just being honest about it. Now because he got cheated. Right.
A lot of us grew up poor. A lot of us grew up abused. A lot of us grew up cheated. But like you said, it could be 999 people turn out fine, and then there's that one. It just goes the opposite way.
Feelings and emotions like anger, hate, lust, and greed. Whereas if I didn't give in to them, I would be crushed by them.
I don't know what these dropouts are of sound.
As far as the crimes they say I committed, I've been convicted of. I still have dreams of everything that has happened, yes. But I like nightmares. I was happy till the day I got arrested. I had hoped, not as much as I would like. I do exercise. I meditate.
You did?
Yes, I meditate.
Here?
Yes, in my cell.
Well, what else has he got to do?
Is to get executed.
What's that?
He was busy. He had a lot of visitors and a lot of attention. And he wrote a lot of letters and did a lot of drawings. And, I have a letter here from the Night Stalker in my files.
Sent to you?
He would write to anybody. I mean, I was young at the time, but anybody who wrote to him, you got a response. It wasn't hard to get an answer from him. He loved writing to people. Yeah.
He had a lot of time.
Rather than spend the rest of my life in prison. I don't have any hope of getting out. And I don't see it as a reality, realistically, looking at it. I don't see myself walking the streets again.
Thank God.
I am not engaged. And no, I don't want to talk about anything like that.
California's Night Stalker has married behind bars.
Were you ever in love with a woman?
I have been in love.
When? How old were you?
I was 15. I was 15.
And what happened?
I got sent, I was with her 3 years and I got sent to reform school. And when I came back, we lost touch and she got married and that was it. Do I associate sex with violence? Break.
What would you? Oh my God! I got what would you before hearing his answer? What would you think of that? Does he associate sex and violence? mean, obviously it would seem that way, right?
Well, it's interesting because if you were to look at studies by people like Hazelwood, you know, the experts that were in that cluster of people like Ann Burgess, you know, Ressler, Douglas. Hazelwood was this expert on sex and violence. I was just editing a chapter that he did for the new edition of Ann Burgess's textbook on SA, and in there, you know, what I was learning is that his large studies of offenders showed that most of them didn't actually kill their victims because it was part of the sexual thrill. They mostly killed them because there was overkill in what they were doing to the person, the torture or the strangulation, whatever they were doing to the person, the person would expire. Sometimes they'd even get mad that the person died before they wanted them to. Or they did it to get rid of the witness. Some of them, like Robert Hansen, the one in Alaska who would hunt women, he started out, you know, really committing SA, but then someone like Butcher Baker, right? Someone runs away from him, and then he like stabs her, and he realizes that it's exhilarating to have hunted her. So he discovers that there's a thrill in the hunt and the kill. So sometimes they discover that. So in a way, Ramirez is a little unusual, because for Ramirez, not that unusual, but he's unusual relative to the Hazelwood, you know, description of why most of them do it, in the sense that the kill itself is part of the excitement. You know, this is like when Tommy Lynn Sells would experience orgasm cutting a throat, right? So Tommy Lynn Sells would talk about how when the blade passed along the neck, he would experience pleasure. Ted Bundy would talk about how when a person died in the middle of what he was doing to them sexually, the clenching of the muscles, the squeezing as the person died, as the spirit left them, so to speak, would induce orgasm for him. You know, it's really disturbing stuff, right? So you're talking about that for some of them, the thrill is the killing of the person itself, the godlike feeling of I have taken your life out of you, or that expression of rage feels like a release. So you have to picture this guy like when he's stomping the victim to death with his shoes, right? Leaving the sneaker marker in her face and everything. Just that release, that explosion that he would have felt would have had an orgasmic quality to it for him. So I think in that sense, there is that mixture of sexual excitement with the person dying. And I also think there was certainly a sadistic quality to him in terms of what he would like make people say, the humiliation. You know, sometimes if a child happened to be present, you know, the child would be like, you know, put in the closet or like made to kind of, you know, sit over there, you know, and the offense is happening, you know, things like that. So there's this kind of weird sadistic thing to him too that I think gave him excitement and thrill. But you really get the sense that in private life, like when he wasn't killing, he would have been pretty inadequate and kind of pathetic. You get the feeling of that. Lord knows, you know, I mean, you know, that there was a victim who talked about, if I remember correctly, I'd have to look at my notes, but talking about how like he couldn't perform, you know, there was that kind of inadequacy thing going on with him, you know, and he would become furious at you. You know, don't look at me or I won't be able, you know, that kind of thing. So he was a kind of an inadequate guy. Yeah.
Well, with him too, like, you know, when he started doing these things, you know, the goal is obviously self gratification and trying not to get caught. And he tried not to get caught for a long time. But like you kind of said, he settled into, he found his place, you know, where he's doing these interviews and people showed him the attention that he was an outcast, really. If you think about it, he was kind of a discarded child, not treated properly or well, not treated like a child, from his father to his cousins to, you know, many others. And the after, you know, kind of the after effect is that he enjoys the attention that he never got. you know, as a child, a teenager, and how old? This is a great question. How old was he when he was arrested? Do you know?
Oh, I'd have to do the math. I mean, I think, was it 1985 when they caught him? 1985 spree ended, right? And he was born in 60, right? So he would have been like 25 years old, if my math is correct. You know, if I'm right about the dates. So, I mean, you know, but which is like right on time for when you would have expected this guy to be doing what he was doing with his offenses that led up to this. But really, the other thing you want to think about with him is, you know, he must have had a paraphilic disorder, because he was for some time interested in children. Right. I mean,
yeah, that's a huge part of his story. I mean, you know, even the disgustingness of, you know, after he would commit those disgusting acts and then returning the child to, you know, to where he got them from. I mean, just unheard of behavior. Just so it didn't make it. There's no rhyme or reason to the crimes that he commits, or who he decides to kill or doesn't.
Well, I mean, what it shows is that, like you see in some mass murderers, like mass shooters and people like that, is a kind of misanthropic attitude toward the entire human race. Tommy Lynn Sells had that going on too. You know, Tommy Lynn Sells, who is, I think, one of the worst of the worst, at 22 in my book with Michael.
Really?
Tommy Lynn, oh yeah, awful. Tommy Lynn Sells had that same thing where anybody would do, right? Anybody, any place, whole families, babies, children. I mean, I could talk about some of the things he did, but we'd get like thrown off YouTube. They're really bad, really, really bad. I mean, I'll just give you one example that like somehow will slip through to give you an idea of that overarching rage toward the whole world. There was an incident where Tommy Lynn Sells was passing through a town, and a woman who had a boy, I think about 8 years old, with her, accidentally brushed him, like brushed his shoulder. He couldn't let that go. And he followed her home, and he killed the woman and her young son with a baseball bat because of that, because of the brush. And Michael Stone interviewed him, you know, and he would say, "Why'd you have to kill the kids?" And he would say, "Well, I grew up without a family. I know what it would have felt like if I killed the family and the kids lived. They would have been by themselves." And so then Michael would say, "All right, well then why'd you have to brutalize them? Why'd you have to throw them against the wall or kill them with a bat? Why didn't you use a gun? Would have been more painless. Why'd you do that?" And he would say ridiculous things like, "Well, guns are dangerous." You know, really ridiculous. Externalization of blame, outrageous. Well, Ramirez, I mean, here we have him not even admitting, you know, the offenses, you know, that kind of thing. And look at the smile when he talks about it, the inappropriateness of the affect, the fact that he can't help but flirt. You know what I'm saying? He can't help himself. You know, and you know, he liked the attention of women in some pathetic kind of way. And you know, the whole idea is to understand that what he was looking for were predictable objects. That's what it comes down to. And to do that, you have to manipulate people, control them. You have to get narcissistic validation from them. You have to be attractive to them or think that you are. You could, you know, what he would do, kill them, you know, scare them, force them to say certain scripted things, whatever it took. He wanted stable objects. And to a certain extent, that's the most human thing about him. We all want stable objects. And I'll tell you, those of us who, you know, if you haven't had loving parents, it's very hard to believe the world is a good place. I mean, for example, even the construct of like Mother Earth, the idea that the earth takes care of you in a parental way, right? The idea of God as father, right? The earth mother, you know, these are constructs that suggest that we project outward what we feel about those objects. There are studies that show, for example, that the relationship that a person has with their father very much predicts whether they even believe in God or how they relate to God. The relationship that people have with their mother very much predicts their attitude toward organized religion in studies. That's fascinating, right? So it says something about archetypes and how Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I tell you that, you know, as somebody who has experienced that kind of stuff, especially with, you know, a father, trust is something that really, when your father is your mother is as well, your protector. Of course, she'll do anything she can, but the father is supposed to be the, you know, the strong, physically strong, can protect you from other people harm and fight them off. And when they do the harm to you, how do you trust? How does the world doesn't make any sense? And you would think that at some point, everybody in your life is going to betray that trust. And how are you supposed to face the world that way? And so what did Tommy Lynn Sells and Richard Ramirez have in common? They were both abused as children. No question about it. Very much.
And neglected, that kind of stuff.
No question.
No home. Yeah,
right.
No home.
And so, yeah, how do you navigate? Now, we talked about the nurturing aspect of being a child that, you know, either is nurtured or neglected. And like I said, luckily, when it was me and my sister, we ended up in the hands of good people, because it could have went really south really fast. No question. And
That's how you save a person.
Yeah. Yes. And that's what it is. That's what it was with my children, was that I always wanted them to feel as safe as possible, and knowing that I would never betray that kind of trust. But when it happens to you, and we're talking about these guys as psychopaths as well, because that's what I mean. They're very, you know, I mean, these people are.
I mean, I think I agree with Michael that he was more of a secondary psychopath.
Yeah, he was made. He was made. Yes.
In his case, I think. I mean, and his brain was, you know, slanted in a certain way. Let's put it that way. You know, but it's interesting how two people could grow up in the same house, and one could be like that, and the other one isn't. Right. You know, I mean, remember the Executioner's song? I think Norman Mailer, about, you know, it's like two brothers grow up, one becomes a serial killer and one is an upstanding citizen. Right. I mean, that's, you know, it's the way it goes.
It's very weird the way that like the way that sort of turns out.
Right. Well, but anyway, so proceeding with this interview and watching him
a little bit
disgustingly schmooze and flirt here. Let's see what else he says.
Shit, man, that's a hard question. Break. Shit, man, that's a hard question. I don't know. I can't answer that, Mikhail. I mean, no, we can't get into that. See, she tries and makes, you know, keeps me going, but I can't. Don't laugh like that. You're making me laugh. I hope you edit this real good, Philip. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, man. What do you know, I'm at a loss here. What do you want me to say? People.
I wanted to say the things you've made me think you got to say.
Hold on, Mike, hold on. Look, you know, sometimes I can't say what I really feel. I am pending trial here. As to sex and violence, many people are into...
The question was, does he associate sex and violence together? And he ended up getting giddy like a you know,
the
weirdo that he is.
And you notice he's not ashamed of the content of the question. It's that he doesn't know how to answer it.
That's the thing too. I get it. You know, I get he was an abused child and he had all these things, you know, that working against him in life. But like I said, a lot of people have been abused as a child, and I mean, he's right in the fact, in the sense that the pieces sort of fit together for him. But at a very molecular level, he enjoyed this stuff. And
on a molecular level, I think he was pretty giddy about it. I mean,
well, okay. I mean, yeah, it
no,
was.
I mean, I think you would be.
If you want to boil it down,
we'd be missing the point if we thought that this guy didn't really enjoy it. I mean, he enjoyed it.
Oh,
I mean, he certainly was getting extreme excitement from the power and the release. But remember that he was really hopped up on drugs. Like, this would have been ferocious. I mean, thank God some of these people died asleep.
I know.
But the ones who didn't, I mean, like the 280-something-year-olds. I mean, just think about how that must have felt for the two of them. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff, and there's clubs that.
Yeah, we're talking about you.
Me? Well, sex and violence? Well, no, I don't think I'll answer that. No.
By not answering it, that's an answer, really.
Well, it's also a way of kind of asserting control,
Yeah, I'm not going to give you what you want. It's about me, and I'm going to keep my lucky coins to myself.
הוא יודע מה עברת?
What?
זה קשה לראות שהוא מתקרב אלייך ככה.
Well, I agree. That was a stupid answer, but Jesus, this is a wicked world, and in a wicked world, wicked people are born, and regretting is not my style. I cannot regret. It just isn't me.
Why, you feel it's threatening your well-being?
Possibly. I believe in fate, destiny.
Are there any things about you you'd want to be remembered for? Things that are positive in you, things that you think are special?
I survived as best as I could.
That's what you remembered for? The survival?
Survived as best as he could. I mean, well, what do you take from that conversation? Other than it's all about him and that he didn't really answer any questions.
Right.
But when she asked,
I'll tell you what I think of it. You're right. I mean, I would say that this is a guy who turned the world into a kind of game where there was going to be the one who survived and all these people that didn't, and they were the ones who became the weak ones in his eyes, right? So then by implication, he was strong, he was a survivor. And I think that's in a way what was being proved to himself, that he didn't need anybody, he could always take care of himself, all of that. And, it's an interesting thing, Josh, I was thinking about when I mentioned earlier about the stomping, that they almost caught Ramirez a lot earlier because he wore a very distinct sneaker. And the print of it was on this victim's face, but also on a kind of plastic bucket that was out like underneath a window. There was a shoe print on it. And they, how Chris always talks about how you could use the product and identify where it was bought and so forth.
Yeah, the RN number, yeah.
Right, but what wound up happening, well, I don't know that. I just think they figured out what kind of sneaker he wore. But what happened is Dianne Feinstein, the famous Dianne Feinstein, the late Dianne Feinstein, decided to go on TV and tell everybody that the police found this. And he just went to the bridge and threw the sneakers into the water and then went on and killed a whole bunch more people. And to this day, I have no idea why he felt the need to do that. It completely messed with the investigation. It's like an example of don't let the killer know that you have clues, I don't know how to do those things, but it was it's one of those things when you look back on it, it was pretty boneheaded, and God knows, the effect that it had because he just kept on going. He kept on going for a while after that. He ultimately screwed up by leaving a fingerprint on an abandoned stolen car that he had been sleeping in on the mirror, like because he got kind of messier as he went along. And then they were able to link him. And, an informant gave them like the first name. They knew his name was Richie, Richard. And then, it turned out that eventually they got print, but they were able to link him to a previous arrest and had a picture of him. And then once that picture was out there, it was just a matter of time, because you know how it is. We just saw that with the Manjona case, that once you have a photo, I mean, it's just a matter of when someone can identify the person.
Right. And another thing too is they said that Richard's reign of terror really that we know of was about 14 months. But you can
like, right? It had more of a spree killer like quality because it never you just kept going and go right. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
long pauses.
I mean, what do you consider him? Serial killer, or do you consider him a spree killer?
I mean, there were I have to look exactly, but once there's a cooling off period, like, it depends who you ask. Like some people think a cooling off period is like 2 weeks or a week. Some people think a month. Depending upon your definition, he had cooling off period to be a serial killer, right? With that many victims. It's all about if he had a cooling off. If he didn't, if there were no cooling off periods, he'd be a spree killer. But the motivation is so much more serial killer like. I mean,
and I started a poll in the chat. It's that way people can vote. Would you like
or these revisiting of offenders like this?
You guys like us to do a series on these old cases? Would you tune in?
like Zodiac and people like that? But where are they voting? I want to see this. I feel
it's in the chat.
A referendum on how good of a job we did tonight. So it's in the private chat. Wait,
no, it's just in the regular chat on YouTube.
But why don't I see it? Oh, it's like an informal poll, not like where there's an actual number, right? Or do I not see it?
You can click yes, or you just click yes.
Oh, I don't see that. Where's the poll?
I don't know. It's in the chat.
Oh, look at that. Let's see.
It won't be in the chat on StreamYard. It'll be on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you have to.
Well, what are the numbers so far?
98% say yes. I don't know who the 2% are, but
how do you like that? There's always those. Now I need to know. Like I need to find them and like talk to them and say, what did we do that wasn't interesting enough? Right. You want me to dance? I mean, what do we
we'll see. Maybe that'll put us up to 99. I'll take 98%.
Bothers me. I was a student that if I got a 98, I hung my head low.
Really?
Yeah, I can't. I need 100.
Well, that'll never on YouTube. That's never gonna happen.
Okay.
Like I could put a poll up right now, Dr. Gary, that would say like, "Do you wish Dr. Gary well?" And there would be like 2% that would say no.
There are a lot of people that don't wish me well.
No way.
I see a few of them in the chat. Don't wish me too well.
Don't.
Yeah.
But anyway, overwhelmingly, the answer is yes. And, one of the ones that we've wanted to discuss is, and it would probably be a 3-episode, the Zodiac would take a long time, but something that
it's my favorite to talk about. Yeah.
See, look, they wish you well. I wish you well too. We're still rocking at 98% with over 100 votes.
So 100 people voted and 98% want to do this, where we look at videos like this, because I mean there are a few cases I could think of that the problem is that, especially as you climb the scale of evil, where they're just too horrifying to talk about. I mean, YouTube would give us a problem, right? So I mean, we can't really get into something like, what did David Walker Ray do, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
YouTube allows a lot of stuff much worse than what we're talking about for educational reasons.
Okay.
So I think that
we're probably a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, you are a doctor, and I am not, but still, these are educational purposes.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because it speaks to the utility of the scale, right? that there's like a very clear cutoff of like where you could get away with talking about it. It seems to be like around the 17 area of the scale or the 18 area of the scale. Anything above that involves so much horrendous torture and things like that. We can't, like, how much detail could we really give on David Parker Ray or Ian Henley or, you know, or some, you know, but I think that we need to stick to, you know, historical cases. I would be very interested in doing an episode on something like Jack the Ripper, or you know, or perhaps the Lizzie Borden case. Spoiler alert, as I always say, she did it. You know, that's we could talk about that when I am writing about it, as people know. You know, but like we can't talk about, you know, Bittaker and Norris. Did I ever tell you that Bittaker and Norris called me and Michael Stone? Well, Bittaker did, excuse me, when we were presenting at a conference in Boston on because The New Evil had just come out.
Yeah.
And Burgess invited us up there to give a talk. And there was a person in the audience who presented that did a show on Bittaker. Like she went in and like met him and was talking to him. And she had contact with him, and he placed a call somehow where the message, he wanted to get a message to us. Now, Michael Stone had been a pen pal of Bittaker's for some time, and he placed a call where he wanted desperately to tell us that he did not agree with his placement in the scale. He had an issue with his placement in the scale. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
The book.
Never forget it. Yeah, and I was like, okay.
I mean, like, Dr. Gary, take me out of that book. No, you got me on the wrong. Did he want to be higher?
No, he didn't understand that the way the scale works is that your ranking is permanent depending upon the worst thing you have ever done. In other words, if you kill 20 people and then you stop and never kill anyone again, you still achieve the score associated with having killed 20 people, right? And he did not feel that that should be true. He felt that it should move like a thermometer, you know, where you... The other one who had an issue with the ranking in the book was Kenneth Bianchi, who told us through a reporter his issue that he had with his placement in the book. And it's very interesting, you know, how offenders read it. It's like amazing to me how they read it, and they have reactions, and, you know, and then you get the ones who write you and say, I'd like you to write about me. Let me tell you the details. Are you interested? You know, that kind of thing.
Did that ever happen with some?
Oh, yeah.
You did write about them?
Happened, yes, but I won't say who that was. Because
no, I don't want you to, but
asked me not to say who. So, you know, that happens too, you know, and but I'll never forget that Bittaker, you know, a category 22 killer, reaching out at the conference, because of course he had to make the conference all about himself, you know, which is very interesting. And of course, you know, something that we have said publicly that people don't realize is that Anne and I had a chat, and then she reached out to Ed Kemper to get his advice on Brian Kohberger. When Brian Kohberger was had not yet been arrested, there was no suspect. We were developing a profile, and she wanted Kemper's opinion on what he would see in the scene, the image of the house, the cars, and so forth. And we talked about that on the interview room, where it was very interesting. Before there was even a suspect, Kemper said that he was interested in the cars, the placement of the cars relative to the house and whatever. And he had the sense that the car was going to be the key to, and he was right. Turned out to be 100% right. It was that Elantra that wound up breaking the whole thing open. Right?
Also, you know,
well, that helped to break it open.
Shout out to the interview room on tomorrow, 5 Central. I don't know. He schedules them very well, but
8 o'clock Eastern. So.
8 o'clock Eastern, whatever that means to you. Mr. McDonough, who always does an excellent job. And I would say, Adacor, thank you so much. Happy holidays to you, and thank you for that wonderful donation. That's very kind.
Yes. I think, Josh, you should consider taking a couple of calls where people have questions about Ramirez.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, because I mean, not free for all, And I certainly don't want to talk about you-know-who that has flooded the news. I'm tired of them. And you know what I'm saying? There's something about, like, I went on social media today. I really don't like social media, and I have none until recently. I have one that I'm using, like, you know, where you can't find it just because I need it for research and talking to some people. So, and the thing is, I was on there, and like every single thing is Luigi Mangione. I can't take it anymore. Like, I never want to see his face again. Like, it's just endless. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about, Josh, right? He's just everywhere. And it's like, just stop. I'm done. Like, let the wheels of justice do their thing, and like, put back the cat videos. You know, like, I'm tired of his face, you know, being everywhere.
A little redundant and kind of sickening at the same time. You know, we did that show.
Can't deal with him anymore.
We did that show where we were speaking about him, and you know,
where everything we said basically turned out to be what
it
looks like it was good, right? I mean, you know.
To be honest, though, you know, and I don't. It's not that people have to agree with my opinion ever. That's never the point. But I did feel a little. I felt a little, not upset, but it was just bothersome that some people saw it so much different than I did, and like almost like some sort of, you know, I don't want to get into it. It's just, it was just.
You mean that people thought that he was like a hero or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, that, don't get me started on that.
That's what I'm saying, is that, like, that's where it was a little disheartening, but you know, people are allowed their opinion. It's just, it was a little strange to me, but we're in a whole different world. Let me see here. Let me get this.
Well, I no comment. You know, because I think that people are angry at what they think motivated him. Like, they think that he was motivated by a cause. You know, but without getting into this, I mean, just remember that if you're an anti-capitalist, you probably wouldn't be sipping Starbucks, wearing a $275 bag.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Please enter your show or meeting number and press pound.
What is that? That sounds like movie phone.
It's the call-in.
Welcome to movie phone. Remember that guy that used to answer the movie phone?
Yeah, I do remember that, actually.
Press 1 for the moon over the sea. Press 2 for 101 Dalmatians.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-In Studio web interface.
Good thing I muted it, huh? So stupid. All right, let me throw the number up there on the screen. We'll take some calls.
Ramirez's face on the screen is creeping me out, you know.
Well, he's kind of the I'd love to see Josh, Chris, and Dr. G go over the yogurt shop murders in Austin, Texas. Very cool.
Unusual one to ask for. Okay. All right.
Yeah, interesting.
Who do you think would play Ramirez in a movie?
I think somebody already has, hasn't he?
I mean, I actually don't know of a mainstream movie where someone played him, but if somebody did today, like a star played him, I wonder who would play him. Like, I'm curious if they would do like they did with Bundy, where they got like a heartthrob actor to play him instead of showing like the, you know, the gruesomeness of the person playing up that heartthrob thing. It kind of sickens me, but I wonder who they would. You know, it's like the people calling for Dave Franco to play Mangione.
I don't know. Maybe George Lopez. I don't know.
George Lopez?
I don't know, dude.
It's a good question for people. Remember the time that we were on?
He's a little old.
Somebody tried to figure out who would play me, you, Chris, and Catherine Ramsland, if there were ever. Were you there for that? But still, to this day, cracks me up. And I still think I like the answer people gave, that I would be played by Mark Ruffalo. Who did they pick for you?
I don't know. Probably John Stamos or somebody hot.
I'll take Mark Ruffalo. He's cool. I think he's a great actor, but it's a fun question.
Somebody extremely good looking and well spoken.
Would play you?
Probably, I would assume.
That's cool.
Like a young Brad Pitt or something.
I think for me, maybe somebody who's had like some acid disfiguration.
Yeah.
Looks stooped, with
Who would play Chris?
Screaming on the subway, something like that. George Lopez, I know. So let's take a call.
Lines are open. The call number is 817-799-8214. I think that who's the guy that played Knight Rider?
David Hasselhoff.
Yeah, that would be Chris. The Hoff.
David Hasselhoff would play Chris?
I think so. Don't you? No? That's just me. You're on the air. Save us.
I can't. This is a ridiculous question. Somebody said Will Ferrell should play him. Jack Black. Somebody said. Seriously, I want to know who would play Ramirez. It's just an interesting question to me. It tells you. It's actually a little bit of a study question in my mind because it tells me something about how people see Ramirez.
Somebody's going to play. Somebody. I'll be Jack Black. Okay. Caller, are you there?
Jack Black. Oh my God.
Yes, hi. Sorry about that. I heard talking. It's Nancy, also known as Gummy Bears in Crime. Hello.
Hi. How are you?
How are you?
Good. Are you gummy today?
Good. Hello. I'm extra gummy. The sugar is enough to kill me, but I love it. Okay. So, question for Dr. Brucato. How could somebody who seems to creep the majority of us out just by looks and appearances get through screening of, excuse me?
Are you talking about Dr. Brucato himself?
Are you talking about me or Ramirez?
No, Ramirez.
You're talking about Ramirez, yeah. So
that's all the time we have for today. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so you have somebody who creeps the majority of the public out. Go ahead.
The majority of us just looking at him, being near him, even the girl who was scheduled to have a date with him, he got through screening after screening after screening. And I know that it's possible, but I'm just curious, how can somebody be such a chameleon that a segment of the population is totally creeped out and the rest of the population is like, he's totally normal or seemingly normal?
It's a good question. I mean, but just to be clear, you're talking about Ramirez, right? You're not talking about a different offender.
Yes. Well, no, I am talking about Ramirez.
I think it says something about the personality structure of the offender. I mean, there's two different things going on. I mean, first of all, you have the splitters, right? The ones who compartmentalize, that is to say, who can kind of take parts of the self and put them over there. So like by day, they could be fun coworkers and dads and friends and could be attractive and whatever. And then by night, have this other life that they sort of secretly wish would bridge with the other part of the self. And then you get the types that are more like Rader talked about with the cubing, right? Where it's like your intention being a part of yourself. You can kind of like spin the cube and say like, it isn't an unconscious process. It's more like I'm showing you a part that will make you believe that I care about you, and then I'm going to deceive you. And it's interesting. This gets into this point where I've always kind of bickering with people who misuse the word. I get very frustrated when people say that serial killers don't have empathy. What they mean is they don't have compassion. Empathy has to do with reading people's feelings and even knowing how to like fake that you care, right? Like empathy is like, I look at you and I can tell you're in distress and I respond to it. But compassion is, but then I use that to like get you in my van and take you off and do. So like if you go into a shopping mall and there's a kid that's been like separated from his mother and he's crying and you go over and go, little boy, I'm going to help you. I'm going to take you to the over there to the desk and we're going to call you mom, on the loudspeaker and she's going to come. That's empathy, but you have no compassion because what you really do is take the kid home and do whatever you're going to do. Right. So you want to kind of make that distinction. It's important because that ability to kind of use empathy to mimic being somebody with compassion is how some of these people get their foot in the door, right? And of course, there's the other kind, the roughly 50% Michael Stone and I calculated, who are more schizoid, right? And those people are more the types that are weird, odd. That's how I think I would have seen Ramirez. Is that Rami Malek? You think he would? You know, that's not a choice.
I think so, but he's pretty good looking.
You think Rami Malek is?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's hot. He's kind of hot.
No. No.
You don't think he's hot?
No. No.
Wait, who
Not
don't?
at all. No.
Wait, who don't you think is gummy? Ramirez or Malek?
I don't think Ramirez is hot.
Either one.
You don't think Steve Buscemi with a wig could pull off Ramirez? Picture it.
I said George Lopez and you said Steve Buscemi?
Just picture Steve Buscemi like if he took a wig, like a picture him with like a funny wig on his head. He kind of could pass as the Night Stalker.
No way.
Right?
Oh
Am I wrong?
Yes, you're wrong.
It's kind of like a beaver curl died on your head. Hey, how did you find a picture of Steve Buscemi with a wig? Is that AI? Did that?
Like that. Well,
no, it's
He's
not
like that gremlin that dresses up like a woman. Remember the gremlin that dressed, or like E.T. in drag? Remember that scene? It's got that going on.
I do
That's
remember that. Yeah, E.T. in drag. That's my favorite part of the movie. But I tell you that
E.T.'s innocent.
I'll tell you that I just watched the other night, I swear. This is like 1 a.m. TV watching type stuff. Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, where they were offering free drinks to all the women if you wore, or no, it was free drinks to anybody that wore a dress. So a bunch of dudes dressed up, and then like some guys robbed the saloon, and they were like looking at all the dudes that were dressed up as women. They're like, "You got some ugly chicks in this town," and then they rode off. And that's kind of that's the vibe I'm getting here. That looks
well. No, I think it's pretty scary.
If you trim the hair,
I agree. I think it's pretty scary.
Yeah. This is terrifying. This is what happens like when you go on like a Hinge date.
You started this.
There and like that's what you see, you know, Steve Buscemi with the wig, you know. So let's see. George Lopez. I don't know. I don't see it.
Yeah.
To me, isn't that the guy who plays Gomez on Wednesday? Is that George Lopez? Or am I making that up? No. George Lopez, is he the one that was on that Tucson show? That one? So. Hold on. I think he is.
Well, it's not, he's too old to play him anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Oh, Mary Girl is here from Interview Room. Hi, Mary.
Can Dr. Brucato still hear me?
Of course.
Can you hear him?
Oh, that's okay.
Lisa
yes,
Boo has
I didn't know if I was still on. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I am so sorry to interrupt. I was like, am I still here? So this is pretty scary, Dr. Brucato. If we have all this cubing and compartmentalizing and the ability to be a slithering chameleon, how do we know? As a woman, I can tell you I've probably avoided multiple things in my life. I'm 51 now that I know that I'm like, oh boy, good thing I had a gut instinct on that or this or that. But how does the average person, male or female, but maybe especially women or girls or young girls, how can we even begin to detect that there's something wrong in front of us?
Well, you know, I think that's the reason that we want to believe that these people, if you were to meet them, would be 100% evil, like seething evil, because it's scary than realizing that they're only doing that part of the time. I mean, one of the things that happens when you go into offenders is that you go home and you feel kind of sick to your stomach that sometimes you like them.
Right.
You go home and you're like, they were funny. Like, they were nice to talk to. I think about what they did, and
Mario Lopez.
Mario Lopez. Oh, well, that's different. You mixed up George Lopez. Mario Lopez.
No, Mario Lopez from Saved by the Bell could play Richard Ramirez.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Yeah, but you said George Lopez.
And I stand by that one too.
Yeah.
I want them both to audition.
Mario could work.
Yeah.
Mario could work.
Just saying. I love Mario Lopez. You know, I like both Lopez's. I don't like Ramirez much. Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry for that.
No.
Well, anyway, I think, unfortunately, I wish I could say that there was something that would make you like go running for the hill. When you, I mean, I think with the more schizoid types, they're more off-putting and kind of, you know, what you might call creepy factor. But with the, you know, with the charming, grooming, you know, kind of manipulative type, I think the whole point is that they know everything to say to charm you. I mean, they're masters of it.
Yeah.
They've studied it. They know just what, you know, and so I think that's the whole point. It's the acceptance that you never do know. You know, there are people that were married to serial killers for decades, and then when the police come and arrest the husband, they're flabbergasted. They're carting the person off, and they're going, "My husband was the guy that did that." You know, I mean, that's what we're dealing with. You know, it's amazing stuff. So I wish I could give you more advice, but I think it speaks more to the people dealing with, which is a lot more.
Carry a taser and mace and be skeptical of everybody.
Yeah, well, the nicer, more gregarious, perfect they are, I was always more suspicious. So maybe that's my own natural instinct. So
with your gut.
Thank you, Dr. Brucato, as usual. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you for calling.
Too perfect. Thank you both.
All right, take care.
All right, thank you. Have a good night. Okay, bye.
All right, we got a couple more calls here.
Incidentally, isn't the name of the product gummy bear kind of gross? Like, it doesn't exactly make you want to eat it, right? I
mean, I like gummy bears, but not the. What are the ones that start with
the
an
name of it is so gross.
They're way too hard. They're like you could chip a tooth. It's
a lot of those candies have gross names that don't exactly make me want to eat them.
Yeah,
you know,
I
no.
don't really think about that kind of stuff like you do.
Do you have a favorite candy?
Yeah, I do. Reese's.
Really, you're a peanut butter kind of guy?
I love peanut butter. Yeah, peanut butter and banana, peanut butter and jelly. Just I like peanut butter. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air.
I happen to have a strange thing for Twix.
Well, what's so strange about it?
I just love them. I don't know why.
You just dump them on top of your head or something?
I don't. They're just freaking delicious. I don't know what else.
Caller, if you're not scared off, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hello?
I think it's Calvin Coolidge.
Hi, how are you?
Hello?
Good. How are you?
Good. What's your name? Spirit? Are you with the spirit? There's such a delay, Josh. You got to figure out this delay.
There's a delay. That's why.
It's a long delay. By the time we're done with this call, I'll go get my Social Security check.
I'm so sorry. I'm in the middle of nowhere. So I wanted to call in because I have a very close family member that's since retired, and I live in the middle of nowhere, so nobody can find me, I hope, without revealing too much information. So my family member had Richard Ramirez as a trustee on one of his auto theft charges in Biscayne Center Jail in East LA.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, so his comment was, "Oh my gosh, I had that guy in the kitchen with knives." So I guess my question is, yeah. So, and I remember we grew up in Southern California, so we were sort of terrified, you know, during that time. It was one particular summer where he was very on it as far as victims up and down, you know,
the Southern California coast, the 5 freeway, things like that. But I guess, with going back to that, of asking Dr. Gary Brucato, and I'm thankful, Josh, that you're having this on, because I've had so many questions through the years. I haven't seen all these interviews either.
Yeah,
That
Gary is awesome for coming on and talking with us.
No. Well,
absolutely. And I'm going off firsthand knowledge.
Yeah. Well, it's a disturbing story because what it does is it brings to life, the way that the public is kind of held hostage while this person is slithering like a snake under their feet, right? And that's a part of the victimization process too. It's like when Son of Sam was killing people and women were changing their hairdo, because they thought that he favored women who had a certain look, that they were afraid to leave the house unless their hair was a certain way, that kind of thing. And the story you're telling, it just kind of adds to the picture of the terror of this guy, and how people felt about him. It's as time goes on, people slip into, almost like legend. We forget that they were real and horrible. You ever read a story from history and it happened so long ago that you don't really pause and think about that it was true, but like it's horrifying. Like if you just like pause and think about it, that like there was a day when that historical event really happened.
Yeah, I think about that like with the Holocaust.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or like
I think about how terrifying that must have been to be a prisoner. It actually just kind of puts a lot of things into perspective, because like you see those like videos of like people behind the fence and there's like little kids there. It's just a terrible. But yes, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it's dangerous. I mean, I'll tell you a story. When I was a boy, I loved writing to famous people, noted people. I had mail come constantly from all over the place, everybody you could think of. And I wrote to Elie Wiesel, the author of Night, the Holocaust book Night, that won the Nobel Prize. And he wound up actually dying from the same cancer my father had in the same hospital, if I remember. But he was at, I think Boston University. And I was a little kid, like I said, and I went into B. Dalton bookstore, which was kind of the Barnes and Noble of its day. And I moved the copies of Night from the fiction section to put them in the history section. And then I wrote to him and I told him that. I still have the letter here. And he said that he could, obviously he could tell a kid had written it. And he told me in the response that he started to cry when he got the letter. And he said, "You're a very sensitive young man." And then he said something like, "One day you will understand the significance of the gesture." And of course, what he meant was that one day I would understand the symbolism of taking a book about what he experienced in the Holocaust out of the fiction section and putting it in the history section, because some imbecile had misfiled it, like as if it didn't really happen. And it is important to remember that these things really happen. I mean, read about a historical execution or something like that, and you just can't believe that there was a day, if you went back far enough in time, that really did happen. That kind of stuff. And with this stuff, we're in danger. Sometimes, like you look at Ramirez, you forget, like, go back a little bit in time, and these were real people, like really laying in their bed. Some guy like gets in the house and just brutalizes them in the darkness of the house, and whatever. And we're looking at this guy like he's some kind of interesting dude. You don't even remember the victims' names. You know what I'm saying? It's you gotta put that into perspective. And so just because it happened a long time ago, it's still real. It still happened. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. We got a lot of gaslighters around these days.
We got to yeet them out of here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you for that perspective, because just personalizing it, and God rest your father's soul. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh yeah, I love very much. Yeah.
You know, people look back, and oddly enough, I was shocked when I came on tonight to look at Josh's channel. You know, I turned on the lab, didn't think of anything, and there was Richard Ramirez's face. You know, we always talk about, you know, the degrees of separation. My sister and my cousin were literally talking about Richard Ramirez a week ago. We still have a friend that lives on the street of his Mission Viejo victims, a few doors down. But, you know, even to personalize what you were talking about, and this is what I wondered, if you looking at Richard Ramirez and, you know, his psychopathy or whatever it may be that afflicted him, did he have the ability to adapt? And the reason I asked that, it's funny that Josh kind of brings up, you know, that era of the 70s, 80s rockers type of guys, because when my family member, and I won't divulge, but very close family member of mine that had him as a trustee under that auto theft charge in Biscayne Center, Richard Ramirez was heavily into AC/DC, Metallica. We were forbidden to listen to it in the house. So it really shaped, you know, the era of when Richard Ramirez was on the spree, or, you know, serial killings of, you know, how close together that they were. But looking at that, one, this family member had expressed over the years that Richard Ramirez was almost incensed, you know, and I hate to say this as a Christian person, but he was almost incensed at the fact that they did not give him, or he was not entitled to, a satanic Bible in Biscayne Center, and that he wore pentagrams, and he wanted sunglasses. He was almost entitled to a point that he felt that he had the right to those particular items. And I'm not sure about prison policies. I'm sure they've changed since the late 70s, early 80s. But looking back at that and how he was housed, Biscayne Center had a main building. It was an older building. It's since shut down in East LA. And it became, because of the prison population in Los Angeles County, so overflowed, and it was minimal level, you know, people in and out processing, waiting charges on other crimes, mainly like your thievery, your lower level offenders, you know, things of that nature. So when Richard Ramirez was in there on an auto theft charge, he was in the main building, but they had brought in almost like these portables to where they were housed, sort of like out in this area with, you know, fencing and things of that nature. But a few things that stood out as far as looking at Richard Ramirez and wondering, you know, how his, you know, mental status, or how you would diagnose him as a doctor, how it would fall into the earlier things of him before people knew Richard Ramirez as a serial killer. One was the thing of almost entitlement to objects, you know, that he felt that he was in it, and he was a practicing Satanist, very much so, because the family member was religious, and it very much off-put him. But he said he was very quiet. He came into the kitchen at Biscayne Center. He did his job. They checked out the knives. They make sure the knives were back. He said, probably thank God. He said that he was almost like the guy where he would make your hair stand up on the back of your neck. And then Richard Ramirez almost tried to ingratiate himself when he found out this family member was a Vietnam veteran that had become a sheriff.
Well, remember, he had to
speak to him. I did not know that about the uncle of being a vet.
Cousin.
But
you mean Miguel, the one who had been in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who was a terrible influence in Richie's life at the time.
Right.
One of many.
I did not know that. So that is very interesting.
Well, I think, you know, that sort of personal experience that someone you know had with him is exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about, that grounds us in the reality that these were ordinary people. And, you know, that's the whole thing. Very important to kind of do that. And so I like, for example, when biographers write a history where they they don't try to turn somebody into a saint or like a demon. They show that they're just an ordinary schlub, who happened to do something great or happened to do something, did horrible thing. But in between, people are not day in and day out saints or day in and day out evil, right? It's what happens in the rest of the time that's interesting. I remember one time I was working at Columbia with a guy who won the Nobel Prize, and he was very famous, like the kind of guy people all over the world were like writing to him for autographs and things like that. And somebody who was a great admirer said, "Did you ever bump into him?" And I said, "Of course, I see him all the time, on the elevator or whatever." He said, "What does he say? What does he say?" And I said, "Well, you want to know what he said today?" I said, "Okay, well, he went to the cafeteria and he bought a Snapple, and then we rode the elevator up and we made small talk about the weather, and then he went to his office." Like, that's it. Like, they're just ordinary human beings, right?
These
And
pretzels
it's
are
the same thing with these people. Right, they're just people. They put their pants on the same. Yeah, and so that story that you're telling, I kind of appreciate it because what it's doing is it's kind of saying, like, when this guy wasn't doing everything he did for effect, he was just an ordinary schlub. You know what I mean?
I gotta tell you though, when we're talking about the Night Stalker's victims, I mean, he had many victims that he killed and assaulted, and
the ripple effect of victims. Yeah, right,
exactly. It's like like terrorism. Terrorism isn't about specifically the act of the harm of people. It's about the fear that's instilled in people that there is something coming or could be happening. It's to disrupt your daily life and to be scared. And I keep, how many people were traumatized by this for years and years? They're like, if you read Atticor, says people in Orange County were buying out guns and ammos back in the early 80s. He put a scare in many like no one else had. I mean, it's exactly true. The whole point is not only the actual, I guess, firsthand victims, but you're right, the ripple effect, and his family were victims. And then the victims, had families who became victims. He caused so much terror and chaos.
Enough evil. They used to say about the biographer of Tommy Lynn Sells, Diane Fanning, a dear friend of mine. She just dedicated a book she did to me because I gave her an idea to write a book about historical fiction about Lizzie Borden, and she did. But she knew him, and she said there was enough evil in him to rock a continent. And that's kind of how it is, with Ramirez. You have to see it that way. And in that sense, he got his wish, right? We can't. Yes. You can't look those good and decent people up without seeing this face.
Let me see. All right, Rach, we got another call. I appreciate you.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
All right. Maybe one or two more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Josh, I'm okay with going to like 12:30.
Me too.
Maybe two more calls. All right, as long as the audience isn't feeling like Morpheus is knocking them left and right here.
Caller, go ahead. Where are you calling
I don't know
from?
where that phrase came from, but I like it. Morpheus. Anyway, whatever.
Hello.
Hello.
Am I on?
Hello. I've ever heard.
Hello.
I like that.
I'm calling from the chilly state of Montana.
Hello.
Brr. But I am originally from San Diego, grown up in Southern California. And I'm admitting something here that I've seen with Chris on the show. I think he dealt with this. I'll call him a gentleman, but I was stopped by Craig Pyre, who was a CHP officer back in the day. I graduated from high school in 78. This was in the 80s. I was blonde, had a sports car, and I never admitted this to anyone because I followed my instincts, I'm just going to say. And I wanted to ask the doctor about instinct. I always thought that your first sense is your sixth sense, and you should follow it. And I had stopped for gas where Kara Knott had
stopped on Highway 15. It was
That's
night.
the woman he
I
killed.
got in my car.
Is that the woman he killed?
Yeah.
That was her name, right? Yeah, Karen Knott. That was the student that.
Yes, Karen Knott.
Saying, and then they found. Yeah, that's a horrible story. Yeah.
Her father, the one that actually found her, because they didn't send anyone out that night. But what had happened is about 2 days prior to that, he had stopped me and he tried to take me down an on-ramp that was not completed yet, and it was dark, and I refused, and he got mad. And I didn't care. My first sense was say, do not go down into the dark. There's no reason for him to interview you or to ask you a question or to give you a ticket. He can do it right here. And when I stopped, I refused to open my window, smaller than just to get my license out. And he was fuming. And for some reason, I always followed what a policeman said, never what I really contradict. And I just wanted your advice, doctor, on following your instincts and what you think. I know it saved me, but now it scares the crap out of me when I look back. So I would love your...
First of all, I really appreciate your sharing that story. You know, the Pyre story is one of those ones you don't really hear about. He's been like buried in the, you know, the awful pilings of true crime, and you know, but if people were to look it up, they'd see what a disturbing story it is. The Knott murder, you know, is really disturbing. And I think, you know, what you're speaking to is that if something in your gut tells you something is wrong, listen to yourself. It's better to err on the side of caution, right? And you know, there's a whole theory that women almost have a better skill at that than men, at kind of feeling out things about the whole. There's this whole theory that it has to do with raising, you know, historically having been principally involved in the division of the family structure for thousands of years, that being principally involved in taking care of children, because the idea was that you needed to be acutely aware of risk and threats, so that there's this kind of evolution towards having almost like a sixth sense of going like, something's wrong. Where's the kid? You know, where's the... And of course, all throughout history, women have been unfortunately preyed upon by awful, entitled, you know, people. And so I think there is this kind of culturally developed and probably even biological evolutionary kind of thing of having this very strong kind of sense of when somebody's predatory or dangerous or whatever. And I mean, look, your instinct was right. Your instinct was correct. How did you get away?
What I've noticed is with technology is a lot of people do not use it as much anymore.
Well, common sense is, I mean, please. I mean, if they sold it in the store, I'd go buy hundreds of cans of it and give it out on the street. I mean, you know, but seriously, how did you get away from Pyre?
He was getting very angry, and finally he got pissed. And he said, just get out, just go. And when he said that, I backed up and I didn't look back. I could tell that I had stopped some kind of thought process in him. And I used that to just leave. And if he was going to follow me, then that was fine. I would, you know, contact this or deal it in a more light, proper area. But I just knew, get the hell out. And when he got pissed, I just backed up and he did not follow me out. So I knew that I had stopped a process in his brain.
Well, you know, there are all these interesting tricks, I mean, that I've learned from people who have survived offenders that tried to lure them. And, you know, it's really intriguing. For example, with Bundy, there was a story told of a woman that he had picked up. And, I mean, retrospectively, she realized it was Bundy, right? In the same way, you know, you had a near miss with Pyre. And he was talking to her, doing that, you know, phony small talk thing that he did to try to engage you before, you know, you'd be bopped on the head and taken off somewhere in that way that organized offenders do. And she told him too much about herself. She became a little bit too much of a person to him. And he dropped her off. You got rid of her. Because the whole idea is that the offender has to project onto you what they want you to be. And they don't want you to have a personality. If you start saying, you know, my mother's name is this, my father's name is this, I do this for a living, or whatever, they're not interested in that. And you become too much of a unique person. They don't want you. The whole point is they want a blank slate to project onto, an object. Remember that scene in The Sounds of the Lambs where they're trying to appeal to Catherine Martin's captor? So they keep saying her name and showing pictures of her, showing her as a baby. And then, you know, Casey Lemmings are standing there with Ardelia is the character's name, standing there, and she says, "Oh, Jesus, that's smart. That's really smart." Remember? And Clarice is like, you know, if they get him to see the Dr. Lecter as a person.
I was also wearing a nurse's outfit.
Yeah, right.
I was a nurse, and when he saw the white nurse's outfit, I think that might have done something, because you know, they see us at the hospitals or whatever. Right. And something about that, maybe I had more knowledge than he thought, or what, I didn't know. But what got me was Rory Devine, who worked for NBC TV, actually got in the car with him to do a show on how not to get murdered by the guy on 50, and it turned out to be him she was interviewing. That was the coup de grace. I just,
That's great. That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. But, you know, that's like something that, you know, somebody's got to write a book about, you know, these different ways that people have gotten away from these people. But thank God you're okay. So, but that was really brave of you to tell the story. I know Chris would appreciate that story, so I'm glad that you, but of course, when you survive something like that, then the next question becomes, why did I, right? What am I called to do? Like, why did I get another chance? You know, what, right? And so I hope you've
survivor guilt.
Well, I don't know. I mean, think about.
I'm okay. I survived pancreatic cancer too, so
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know what? I'm here for a reason, and I'm watching you two, and I'm learning a lot. And thank you for allowing me to tell that story. I've never told it, and I'll be 65 next Thursday.
Awesome.
Really? I thought you said you had told it. Didn't you tell that story to Chris McDonough or no? Oh, I thought
never, no, sir.
Oh, well, thank you.
I came on one time and I had printed it, but he was busy, and I never, you know, got a chance to say it. So
that's so interesting. Well, I'm honored that you would feel that you would be willing to do that here for the first time. It really means a lot. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Have a wonderful holiday. Yes, please do. Although, Josh, it doesn't really quite feel like Christmas, does it?
No, but you know, no.
Hot out. Santa Claus is getting like sunstroke.
I missed part of that call because I had to go to the bathroom, but I had this piece of paper that I was walking through the house with, and my dog Otis, as I was walking, jumped up, ripped it out of my hand, and ran out the back door.
What was it?
It was just some notes that I had been taking, and I grabbed him on the way out, and he took it.
Sorry, Otis wins.
Yeah, well, he can stay outside.
That's hilarious.
And the thing was, when he took it, and as he was running out the back door, he started like shaking it. Like he hasn't done that in probably a year. I don't know.
It's like that old excuse that kids have, right? That the dog ate my homework.
Well, I don't know if he ate it, but what he does is he shreds it. He thinks it's fun.
Now you don't have anything to say because the dog ate your homework. Yeah. Well, you're like, you know. But so are we going to take one more caller?
I don't think we have any more calls.
Really? Are we that late? Where are we unpopular?
I think so. Let me see.
I keep quoting Woody Allen. I don't know why I'm in the mood. I guess he used to say that. What are we, a plague?
Oh, oops! I had it on suspended calls. Okay, well, if anybody else wants to call, we got a few more minutes left. So 817-799-82.
People have been surprisingly on topic. Oh, I'm sorry. Give the rest of the number. 817-799-8214.
8214. Yeah, and people are saying Zodiac next. Kelly Dime says that she actually did have a dog eat her homework. Luckily, it wasn't my homework, but it just pissed me off because, but I think the thing is because sometimes I take paper from him when he's got it. I'm not kidding. I'd like go, what are you doing with this? And I take it. I think he thinks that that's what he's doing to me.
Oh, I see.
He cannot be trained.
What,
you know
what breed is he?
He's a French bulldog.
They're pretty adorable.
Oh yeah, they're great.
You got a picture of him while we're waiting for this call?
Yeah, I'm sure I do. Hold on.
With the paper in his mouth?
No, not the paper, but
I need to see Otis. I'm a dog freak. I like dogs.
I like dogs too. But
yeah,
sometimes
I cannot understand somebody who doesn't like dogs. I just don't grasp it. There has to be something wrong with you.
Well, there's sometimes I don't like Otis for a few minutes.
And people who hurt dogs, I mean, that same poem that I quoted before by Blake with the Robin Redbreast, it has a line that says, "A dog starved at its master's gate predicts the ruin of the state." It does. Right? I mean, anybody who would do that to a dog, it tells you everything you need to know about.
Yeah, they're terrible people.
About who they are, but also about what would happen to society if a lot of people did that. I mean, we'd all be pretty sick. So, okay, let's see. Oh my God, that's Otis.
This is Otis right here.
Holy crap. Yeah, that's a pretty cute dog. How could you be mad at that dog for stealing? This is ridiculous. That's almost too cute.
Now, what he's doing,
here's like an AI generated dog. It's too perfect.
This is what he's doing. He had managed to take this tire and shove it through this barbell, but he realized the only way that it would go through there is if he slobbered all through the inside of the tire. And then he rolls it on with his hand. It's like Escape from Alcatraz on steroids. Watch this. See the roll?
That's the cutest thing I've ever seen. Look at his ears.
I know. I see him. Look, watch. He's pushing it through, and then
oh my God.
Bingo. Look. Nailed it.
Kind of smart.
He's something.
Yeah, I could watch that dog do that all day long. Just play like that all day. Fascinates me. You have only one dog?
No, I have two. Macho.
What is Macho?
Macho's his dad. He's also a French bulldog.
What does Macho look like?
He looks exactly like Otis, but fat. Here's Otis too when he hosted the show.
Holy crap! Look at him. He looks like a jaguar. Like a panther or something. I mean, look at him.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, look at that fur. Look at those ears. Look at those eyes. Look at that. Amazing. That's just, I can't do. I love all animals. I mean, anything. Any animal I'm crazy about. I just don't understand anybody that hurts animals. They're so much kinder and more predictable, you know.
This is when he was a puppy.
Not interested. Humans are just nasty to me, but animals? Oh, look at them.
This is when he was a little puppy.
Oh my God! He's purebred. Is it a purebred dog?
Yeah, yep.
I can't handle the puppy though. That's too much.
Too much.
I can't deal with it.
He drives me nuts.
Holy crap!
But
I tell those people, Josh, when there's like a horrible story in the news, you know, like you could bear it because you've been dealing with true crime, but then like they say, and the dog was also killed, and you're like, ah! That. You just can't.
That's a bridge too far.
It's not that I don't care about the people. It's just that there's something a little extra.
I can watch somebody get like hit in the head with like a football or something, and they go down and be like, "Oh, that sucks."
Yeah,
I can't see a dog even like stub his foot or somebody step on it.
There is a show floating around on YouTube where Ann Burgess, and Catherine Ramsland, and I talked to a animal rights group. And we gave our opinions about people who torture animals and do things to animals. And it was pretty interesting, to be honest, because, I mean, the three of us, like, we could talk about this stuff all day.
Oh,
all three of us in one place talking about this stuff. I just think people would would really find that interesting. It'd be good for the channel too. So, do we have another call?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, caller, go ahead. You're on the air.
Go ahead. This Kylie Diamond, she's just frozen.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, I'm calling from Tennessee.
Tennessee. Let's see, Tennessee.
The volunteer state.
Oh yeah, I was thinking the show me state, but that's not it at all.
Which part of Tennessee?
The volunteer state.
Which part of Tennessee?
East Tennessee.
Oh.
East Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Are you? Did you start watching because of the Summer Wells case?
No, I have heard of that though. But I really just like to watch Dr. Brucato and you and Chris, on his show. But I wanted to ask Dr. Brucato if he writes poetry.
Oh yes, I do. Yes, quite a lot of it. Yes. I'm a poetry fanatic.
Okay.
Why does that not surprise me?
I don't publish it, but I write a great deal of poetry. Yes, I could publish it, but I feel
I would love to read it. I always appreciate whenever you're in conversation and a poem hits your brain and you share with the audience what poem you're thinking of.
Oh, well, that's
you have a poet's soul.
Maybe. I mean, that's true. Although there's no rhyme or reason to me. But what is your sense of why that appeals to you? What do you think is because it just comes out, I don't understand why.
I'm a student of Emily Dickinson. Probably is my favorite.
That's one of my favorites.
And sometimes you will quote her. Like I remember one time you just started in on "I measure every grief I meet."
Yes, that's
with
right.
Narrow, probing eyes. How you can just quote poetry and it fit the situation that you're talking about fascinates me.
Well, you think
I thought you must yourself be a poet.
If you think his poetry is good, you should hear him talk about chicken parm.
What?
Yeah. He can cook tuna.
You don't
That's
strike
kind
me.
of bad joke on the play on the word poetry.
You don't strike me as a poet, like a poet. You do quote a lot of poetry, but like if I was to meet you and like have a conversation, I'd be like, this guy's into chicken parm big time.
I thought you were making
No, I would say he's
poetry.
No, I knew he was a poet, but do you plan to publish your poetry?
No, probably not. But I've written extensive amounts of it, and I was very influenced by certain people. I mean, since you're asking, poets that have had a big influence on me would be Dickinson, Yeats, Robert Lowell, Philip Larkin, and Sexton, Poe. And I think, let me think if there's anybody I'm missing there in that list that would be really important.
Well,
to me.
Auden, you've quoted Auden.
Auden, yes, and Auden is a great favorite of mine, who of course, was an admirer of Yeats, but I think there, since you mentioned Auden, that you probably are talking about when I quoted the more loving one, right? If equal affection cannot be, let the more loving one be me, right? No, well, I think, as I've said previously on the show,
First time I ever heard you say that, I wrote it down.
Oh, I love that poem. It's beautiful, and Poe is my favorite. I have literally behind me, I have a Poe shelf. I mean, nothing on it, but illustrated editions.
I can believe that.
Statues. Oh no.
What about Robert Service?
Oh yeah, but I wouldn't say that's like a primary, favorite. But yeah, of course. And I also like
for fun. The cremation of Sam McGee.
Yes, I know. I have somewhere here on the shelf. My poem sectional. I have a house where my books are organized with those little signs, like in a bookstore. Like I made little signs using Scrabble letters. So like it says like true crime, and there's like a little pasted to it that's true crime related, and then there's like, you know, a horror section has like a little Lon Chaney Sr. pasted to it. And as
do you have the magnetic poetry on your refrigerator?
No, I don't have that. But it's, you know, but I definitely, as a kid, I kept all my books on index cards in like a Dewey Decimal System. I used to get furious if somebody borrowed one and didn't bring it back. I used to say to them, "Where's my book? I'm missing, you know, code number X, whatever." but the thing is, it's an obsessional thing. Books are very important to me. As I always say,
the library cop.
Special place in my heart. I love that you picked up on that, because no one ever really gets into it with me. But
I just would like to encourage you to keep on. Every time that some line of poetry flies through your mind in your conversations, I'd like you to share it, because it always just makes my day when you do.
Oh, well, I could do that all day long. You be careful what you wish for. But I think there's something about, how do I say this? Just to be very quick about it, what I think is beautiful about poetry is that it superficially looks like you're talking about a particular thing, a particular relationship, a particular person, but it's really talking about the universal. And in that person's professional kind of thing, they're standing for something much greater than themselves. I think Robert Frost, being the person who I think may have done that better than anyone, something about him, you know, that he just captures the immediacy of a moment and
the road not taken.
Oh yes.
I'm a Frosty.
Are you a Frosty? That's wonderful.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I have some
serial to go before we sleep, right?
That's right.
Right. I have some serial killer poetry that was given to me in letters and things. It's always very awful, bad, and cheesy, but it has a very juvenile quality to it. It's the kind of thing where like a high schooler would write a poem and it rhymes and it's like really bad, that kind of thing. It feels okay, but that's beautiful. I can't tell you how much it means to me that you picked up on that.
Well, I like that you were quoting Blake a while ago, to see a world in a grain of sand, I like that you were quoting Blake.
Right. That's also from, I think, the same, auguries of innocence. So, but it comes also from having a very visual memory, like I can picture the page of writing, right? So, like, for example, earlier I was reading Macbeth. I really love Macbeth. And I can still see the page, right? Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in its petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays of lighted fools the way to dusty death. It's like a thing where I can just see it, and I think that has something to do with true crime, because I think that's all about, like, it's very visual. You're like looking at a scene and you have to imagine yourself into the shoes very quickly of the victim, imagine yourself into the offender, but the cost of that is that you so visualize it that it's like stuck in there as if, you could really see it, and you have to kind of so that kind of imagination.
Well, I like that you're a Dickinson fan.
Yeah,
I like that you're a Dickinson fan, and I think it's important if I can stop one heart from breaking.
Oh yes. I've gone to
live in vain. So that is to me, that is your spirit, and I appreciate that. And I just wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas, both of you. And thank you for including poetry in your conversation.
Merry Christmas.
That's wonderful. And you know who I'm lately getting very into, if you don't already know her, is Mary Oliver. I would strongly encourage you to read some Mary Oliver.
Oh, yes.
Terrific. I
know Mary Oliver.
Oh, I love her. She was really brilliant. And
when my mom and dad had their first wedding anniversary, my dad gave my mother a leather-bound copy of the 100 Greatest Poems. And when I was growing up, my mother would read to us from that 100 Greatest Poems book. And they had little oval pictures of the poets.
Oh, cool.
And I used to, as a very young child, look at those pictures and wonder about those guys. And Emily Dickinson was one of the few ladies in that book.
There's only one picture of her, so just one picture.
Yeah. St. Vincent Millay, I think, was in there as well.
If you could see my room here, you would see that to the left of the screen there is a framed image of her, the same photo you're talking about, in a 19th century.
Yes, a daguerreotype.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yes, I also
to the
love
left of them, there's a hyperbolic chamber.
No. There's a more and more books.
It's like a library.
Images of poets I like, and Emily Dickinson is right there to the left.
Well, you write so much about these criminals and about death, and Emily Dickinson wrote an awful lot about death. And it was because there was so much, childhood illness and deaths in her world. And she lived right across the street from a cemetery.
Yes,
so she could see, death.
Yeah.
And once she even wrote, the sweeping up of a house the morning after death is the solemnest activity enacted upon earth.
And of course, I felt a funeral in my brain.
Yes. And because I could not stop for death.
Oh, yes.
She kindly stopped for me. So, yeah, I just love it that you're a poet soul, and just wanted to, again, say Merry Christmas and thank you for that.
Oh, that's beautiful. And don't forget, the poetry of everything, right? The meaning, looking behind things to see the deeper significance is very important. And Christmas is all about that. Christmas is like a message in a bottle from God, you either read it or you don't. And if you read it, and you understand it, it's the best news we ever got. You know what I mean? And so you have to kind of.
I know. Last week you talked about the wise men, and you told a story about the wise men that I had never heard, and that was that one of the gifts of the wise men had to do with the spice they used during funeral.
That's true.
Proceedings.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I did not know that until you said that.
Yes, myrrh. Myrrh was it's an interesting thing that how theologians figured out that the visiting of the Magi was different than the day that Christ was born. Because when we do a nativity scene, the St. Francis style creche, we put the Magi walking, to the crib on the day Jesus was born. But it actually
would the same night. It was really like 3 years later.
Right. Well, the way we know is that it tells us in the New Testament that they went to do the sacrifice in the temple after Jesus was born, and they brought. You remember they got the little bird, the little dove, and made the sacrifice. Well, that was the sacrifice you made when you had a baby, but you were poor. And if Mary and Joseph had been visited by the Magi and received gold, they would have been bound to make the larger sacrifice. So the theologians concluded that have been visited by the Magi and given gold, and then gave the little dove in the temple. It would have had to have been that the Magi came later, after the presentation of the baby in the temple, where you would have done that. And it's fascinating how people can do things, right? So we know that the Magi would have come later, and so it's interesting to think about that. Right. So think of it like that. It would have been.
I did not know that.
But it's very important because
I always thought it had something to do with astronomy, the way they figured that out.
Well, I think it's important.
But that's interesting.
What it means is, who were really the guests at the birth? Shepherds, filthy, dirty shepherds, and that's God's love, right? So, but anyway, I think it's very sweet how you notice the use of poetry. I think that's wonderful. I really, really do. And people always find themselves, in what they notice in other people, right? So it seems fitting to quote a poem when Cummings said, "For whatever we lose, like a you or a me, it's always ourselves we find in the sea." Well, I appreciate that very much. And you filthy shepherd is my new insult. There you go. Yes, of course. Well, speaking of filthy shepherds, do we want to go back to Ramirez or what?
No, I don't think we can.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody, and I guess this is a good place to stop.
Yeah, thank you for the call as well. It was very, very nice, very kind.
Yes, that was beautiful. I love talking about programming. Half the audience probably, they fell asleep, or it's like somebody stepped on their oxygen tubes or something. They're like glazed over, But I think it's beautiful that you called it about that, and thank you. It means a lot. Okay. So, anything else, Josh, we should say before we go? You want to announce another show, or are we kind of off for the holidays?
No, man, I'm here. I mean, if you are, I am.
Yes, I am familiar with Patrick Wayne Kearney. In fact, I have a signed document in here. In my I could show that he really is a. Ugh, that's another one that I. It's like you talk about these people get sick. So, but you want to announce another show or no?
No, yeah, absolutely. I know people are wanting the Zodiac, or we can just do a call-in show. Whatever. It's people enjoy it. So.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to do whatever you want. I mean, I think if people do want to do these historical cases, remember that. People are going to be a lot more comfortable talking about those cases because they're like a done deal. Like these people's lives are we could say whatever we want about them. We have to be a lot more cautious with people like where they're still new. They're still new, and we don't really know stuff, and we're taking kind of guesses. And so I think it's better.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, we can play interviews, of the ones that did extensive interviews, and
we have more time to put them together. I mean, you threw that together quickly, but one thing I do want to ask you before we go, Josh, I have the sense that there are updates in the Sebastian Rogers case, but I'm a little lost. Any significant updates that you're aware of, or is that an incorrect? I mean, it seems from something's going. I mean, is there anything new?
Not that I cover, to be honest with you.
Was there like a video of
there's a video of him eating at the restaurant with his mother the day or the day before, day of that he went missing.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I saw it.
How does he look like he's acting with her?
I can show you.
Oh, well, listen, that's a good way to. I love ending on talking about a victim, a missing person, someone that really conveys what this is all about, right? I mean, instead of like, this guy on the screen here with this hideous eyes.
We'll get him off. Let me see.
Well, it's like it's like hypnotic. I mean, that he's just this creepy face there on the screen.
He's something else, right?
So get him off, Ugh.
I can do that, but hold on.
That's before he got sick and he started to look really awful.
I mean, yeah, he was.
Oh, is that Leanne that's on the screen there? She's the one who survived the attacker. That's
I'm trying to find one that's not like.
Did you show this to Chris?
I didn't, but he is aware of it.
Sure.
He mentioned it to me, but I didn't show him. Does anybody know of show them the video? Does anybody know where I could get the one?
Let me see.
Because I don't want any commentary. That's the problem.
By the way, the person that's asking about Jordan Brown, Are you talking about the Kenzie Hook case? Is that what you're talking about? I'm just curious if that's who they mean. I mean, that's certainly something we could talk about too another time. It's an interesting case. But I think that's who they mean.
All right, here we go.
So if I don't want to mispronounce the person's name. Bogie. I'm not sure how they pronounce their name. Green Street, but I think they're talking about that case, the Kenzie Hawk case. Oh, this is it. Okay. Look how cute Sebastian Rogers is.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, I
adorable.
Not to be like dramatic or anything like that, but watching this, it's tough because it makes him real, like realer than he's ever been. You know, it's
like we were talking about before. Yeah,
it's just awful to just think that he's just living his life.
Yeah, look at his Baby Yoda shirt.
I know everything about him. He's a handsome young man. Just it sucks.
Oh, I always wondered if he was lefty or righty. Interesting.
Yeah, he's a righty.
What is he eating?
I don't know. Somebody said that it was. People have analyzed this to the ends of the earth, but I haven't because. Oh yeah, I can take the banner now.
What is that thing on his? What is that thing that's on the table?
I think that's where you can pay your bill from.
Is that what that is? It's like a little device or something that you pay the.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you pay your bill from it.
Oh, I mean, I'm not sure there's anything about this that,
I don't know. You would know better.
Humanizing, seeing him is, kind of. But he certainly doesn't look like a totally disruptive, kind of.
Not at all.
Outrageous, like a lovely kid.
Looks like a well-mannered boy eating his dinner, and I mean, look, you can make assumptions and assertions anywhere that you want. I'm just not really. It was just not something that I was willing to do because I'm not a body language expert, and I can't hear what's going on. I don't know.
I mean, she's not. The mother isn't eating anything, and she's not really completely connected to him. I mean, she's in her own, doing her own.
She's on her phone, but I mean, I've done that too, unfortunately.
Right. No, I mean, it's just that's interesting. I mean, but
Sure.
but other than that, I mean, I don't know what it really tells us. It would have been interesting to see it if there were, like if the stepdad was there or the, I would have.
No question, but the one thing that I do get from it,
but yeah.
The one thing that I do get from it is I look at him and it's just heartbreaking. I mean, this is
humanizing to see him.
It's humanizing. It makes him so real, and he's just a sprouting young boy, and as somebody who has raised boys, it's just tough to.
What night did he go missing?
I think it was the 26th of February.
So this video was taken the day before.
Yeah, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the 26th.
I mean, because what I find sad about it is that whatever happened to him, right? And Lord knows, I mean, I hope it turns out that he is somewhere,
Yeah, this is the night he goes missing. This.
So there you are. So whatever happened to him, and I don't want to go down the road speculating the possibilities.
Well, he's gone. That's just like what I mean.
Right. But whatever happened to him, there's something about just the calm of the moment that you could see how completely that he has no idea, and so it makes it kind of sad. Just knowing
that something is going to happen, or whatever it is that happened just probably hours after this.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And then looking at it with that kind of weird foreknowledge of what's going to come next, it's like, when Joan Didion talks about how, you know, every time you imagine like a little kid on a swing and like the parent pushing them, she imagines that like 1 second later a cobra could jump out of the bush and strike the kid in the ankle. And then all they would remember is that like a second before, you know, there was this idyllic scene in the park with the swing and the, you know, it's like that. It feels like a cobra's going to jump out, and we know that. So we're looking at it like,
yes,
and it has a way of breaking your heart.
Margaret here, you know, that's, I hope that this wasn't his last meal, but that's just what it feels like. You know what I mean? Like it feels like this. I hope that, you know, we don't have any indication one way or the other, but I do know statistics, and they don't point in a positive direction, but you know, miracles happen. And so I hope that this wasn't his last supper, even though I fear that it may have been. I wish.
We don't know. I think
it's just
right.
See, Kate takes photos of Sebastian. Her left hand goes to her pocket. Is there a camera in her pocket? I can't tell.
No.
You know, and I don't know. I mean, her take. I don't know who she's sending photos to. I mean, it could be a million different people, but maybe she's just saying, yo, you know, he's well behaved or whatever. But all I know is that he went missing on her watch. Not saying, you know, I'm not saying she's responsible or not responsible, but the whole thing has since day one has felt off. And somebody knows something, and I don't buy for a second that everybody's in the dark about this. I just don't. And I'm not, you know, I don't want to go into it too much because it's frustrating. It just is. I don't know why. Let me see.
I think that at least at this minute, I mean, I think what we're really trying to convey is the humanity of this.
You want to know one of the worst things about here? I'll take this off really quick. I was one of the first 2 or 3 people to cover this case extensively, and now you know it's
true. Actually, yeah,
and it's a huge story now, and it's
I know
it bothers me that,
and not all coverage is equal. I've seen some coverage of it that's, you know, really out there. You know, people have different opinions and things, but it really poisons the you know, it muddies the water.
It eats at me.
Wild, you know.
This case eats at me every day.
Sure.
I think about it every day, just like the Summer Wells case. I think about that every day. And sometimes, and I know that like this, sometimes I was just like, why, you know, why do you get involved? And it's like, sometimes it just feels like torture, you know, because there are no answers, and then it creates this vacuum and people speculate and turn it into something that it wasn't. And I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of some of that as well, but it's just horrible. I mean, look at him. He's a real person. He's a you know.
That's right. So we're all victims.
I know.
When you look at a you know, statistic sheet, if your brain really, you know, allowed you to realize what you were saying. I mean, like, for example, I always talk about Anna Salter's book, Predators. She says that there was this one study of just a few thousand sex offenders, and they figured out that the average one's number of victims was so enormous that if you took all of the victims of those sex offenders and put them together, it was more than one football field. Now, just pause a minute and think of that. I mean, how could you think of the individuality of a person, right? And that's, you know, you start getting into like Arendt talking about, you know, the banality of evil, right? You know, where you start talking about numbers that are so huge that you stop thinking of them as people. And so I think it's very beautiful to draw attention to to Sebastian and to use his name and to give him dignity. Whenever I meet a homeless person, I always say, "What is your name?" And then when I see them again, I remember their name. I say, "Hi, John. How you doing? Because when you do that, it humanizes you. It makes you feel like you have work. Just because, remember, life is not cheap. No matter what form it comes in, no matter how wretched, no matter how small, life is not cheap.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
if an ant gets in my house, I put it on my hand and I take it out and I put it outside. I wouldn't kill it. Who am I to decide how big of a life is valuable? Now, look, I've had infections where I have to take an antibiotic and kill bacteria, things like that. But I really, if I can, I don't want to kill anything, And I just think that you can't judge the size of life. And any of these people, any of them, that something happens to, yeah, they're a person. They're a person. But what are you supposed to do? You can't tend to the whole garden. You take a little corner of it. You work on one plant, and hope that other people will do the rest.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that I get whenever I speak about this case and interview with Seth or Tony, and people feel one way or the other. There's this really like distinct line in the sand, where it's like you have to choose one side or the other, and I don't. Right. I don't choose a side. Like people want to say, "Oh, you're on this team or you're on that team." I'm not on any team. I'm on the whatever truth is. Whatever the truth is what I want. That's it. Like I can have personal feelings about people that do not interfere with thinking about this case. I don't think that person's personality is great. I don't think that's all of that to me. That's my own personal whatever I gotta, have.
But what bothers me is I don't understand why people in working on a case and talking about a case, I just think people need to work together. There's no reason to tear anybody down or whatever. The reality is that if everyone has the common goal of, like, for example, finding this child, everybody's got to work together. There's no time for that. Because wherever this child is, he cries out for justice, for whatever.
And it doesn't matter to me. Like I have no narrative. I have no bias. Whoever's responsible, I don't care who it is. They need to be held accountable. It doesn't matter who it is to me. I don't care. Whoever's responsible is responsible. And that's going to be the end of that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, look, I just think the other piece of it is that not all commentary is equal. We do live in a time when a person manufactures their own credentials.
Yeah.
Like you say, like, why do you have an opinion on this?
Oh, I get told that.
I have 80,000 followers on
Right.
Like I don't know. I have a problem with that. I just kind of think that what happens with that is everyone's entitled to an opinion, but I just think that, like, there needs to be a weighing of where things are coming from. You know what I mean? Like if you have like somebody from the FBI giving an opinion, it's not equal to the opinion of somebody eating bonbons in the basement, that has decided that they want to be a guru of talking about this stuff. And maybe that sounds bad, in this kind of Mr. Rogers world we're in, where everybody could be anything they want. But the fact of the matter is that you have to go to school, you have to have experience, you can't just label yourself that you know what you're talking about, because a lot of them don't, and it causes a lot of damage.
Well,
a lot of damage.
When we first started covering this case with a young man named Trevor Lee, and there were some things that happened with Trevor that went down that not because of him, because of
I'm not talking about anybody specific. I'm making an example.
Let me just tell you this before. This isn't. I'm not getting personal here. What I'm just telling you is the way that we talked about this case was we shared his flyer, we shared the information, and talked about kind of the circumstances. Then there was a landfill search and all that kind of stuff. And we talked about it, and it wasn't contentious. Now, if you talk about it, if you and I, Dr. Gary, if you and I do a show about Sebastian, there's going to be 10 channels that review it, and they're going to rip us apart for having our opinion because they're all scumbag losers that have no content.
Well, I've never ripped apart for doing a show with you and Chris, to my knowledge.
I'm just telling you what this case would do. If you and I sat here and we analyzed this and gave our opinion, and by the way, your expert opinion, there would be people going, these guys are jerk offs, they're idiots. Dr. Gary got his his certificate, his doctorate from a Cracker Jack box. Josh is fat, all that. It's just like, so it's just weird. It's just a weird, I mean, I call them content vultures. That's what they are. They're bottom feeding vultures.
Do you realize that some of the people that are talking—
Don't get me pissed off, Dr. Gary.
No, I'm not. But do you realize that some of the people who talk about these things have never met a violent offender or a person with serious mental illness?
Well, usually they're the ones that are the violent offenders, the ones talking about.
I mean, just to give you an example, like if I'm giving an opinion about psychosis, let's say, and somebody said to me, how many psychotic people have you met? Right? Well, the answer to that is, let's say just like the 10 years I was at one institution, the answer would probably be, let's say 5,000, right? And then that doesn't include all the other major hospitals, prisons, evaluations privately, private practice, whatever. I mean, the same thing with offenders. I mean, you got to understand, like, I talk to them. That's different than somebody who they have like 5, John Douglas books on the shelf, and they've read them and they say, now I'm ready to go out and give my opinions on them. I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying, like, it's very frustrating.
I'm as familiar with the system as anybody.
Yeah,
I grew up in it, dude.
Yeah. Right. I get it, but you do have a special expertise because you have experienced crime as a member of a family. You have seen it. That gives you a special authority to talk about it. I guess all I'm saying is, I don't care what anybody says. I know it's 2024 and almost 2025, but I still believe that people should be credentialed to do something. I do not believe in the dilettante way of doing things. And it is dangerous. It is as dangerous giving opinions on an open case that could spill nonsense into the field as it is to do dentistry when no one has ever taught you how to use college pliers. You know what I'm saying? Sure. It's like at some point you just kind of go like, maybe you need some kind of credential. Like, I wish there were a license needed to host a true crime program because of the risk, right? And I really mean that. And that's not a knock. There are some wonderful people that, like, if they went to school, they'd be stellar. I some people, I watch the shows and I go, woo, like, that is a smart person, or they have experienced crime, or there's nothing wrong with that. But some, and I'm very careful about, I don't name any, but there are some that I watch and I cringe. I go, dear God, is this opinion off? Is this going to do damage? And I'm not talking about any particular case.
Sure, no, I understand that.
Right, right, and also for those of us on our side, I'm a big believer in that. When you're wrong, you say so.
Of course, but
you go, I didn't speculate that. I'm really sorry. I was wrong.
One of the funny things that I always kind of get a chuckle out of is like when somebody says like what does he know about this, or what does he know about that, or
what do you know about what crime?
Just like I do not for a second consider myself an advocate for anything but right and wrong, and I'm not a child advocate, but I have done that. I have advocated for children that come from domestic violence homes. You get asked to do that through this program called Victim Witness that we have here in California. It's very dear to my heart. I still have a victim witness contact that still contacts me about everything that goes on with my dad. If he moves, if he gets in trouble, if anything. And I've been counseled by people, and I've also spoken with many victims and shared my
experience. That's expertise. You have some expertise.
Right, but you know, and then I'll hear some ass clown, excuse my language, say, "What is Joshua?" I know more about it.
You sound like you're talking about a specific thing that I'm
not really. I'm not. No, not really. There's a bunch of people that feel that way, but I know more about the system, and I know more about trials, plea deals, all that kind of stuff. 25 to life. The death penalty. Look, all that stuff came across us. Matter of fact, one of the reasons that a deal was accepted in the case of my father was, like you said earlier, they didn't want to put little kids on the stand.
Right. Like in
my sister was old enough to testify, and they were like, "There's no way we're going to let this happen. We cannot let this happen." So a plea deal was negotiated, and to keep specifically my sister and my counseling that I had to go to off the record, because they were going to read it in open court.
Oh.
And they were like, "No, we're not letting this happen." My grandparents. And so
that's very powerful.
And they took a deal, a 25 to life, which they were going for. The death penalty was on the table at the time. And they said, "No, we're not going to let this happen. We're not going to let it happen." And now, because of that deal, my father is in the 25 to life. He's doing life on the installment program. So he comes up for parole every few years. It's a pain in the ass to deal with. It sucks. But I'll tell you that, and I told my grandma this one time. I said, "Look, if I was older, there would have been no deal. None."
Right.
But I know why you did what you did, and thank you. I understood. And she said, all we wanted was to keep you two safe until you were old enough to take care of yourselves, and then you could make your own decisions. That was their whole goal, and I thank them for that, you know. But like I said, if I was older, there would have been no deal, none. It should be life, no parole. I mean, if you think of, you know, and I told the parole board this one time. I said, "Look, we're sitting here talking about, you know, whether this man who put bullets in two different people." I said, "If my aunt would have died, it would have been automatic life, double murder, life, nothing else." And I said, "But because he missed by a centimeter of killing her, we're having this conversation." I said, "Doesn't that seem crazy to anybody else here?" I said, "The intent to kill to me is the same thing as killing somebody. When you put a bullet through somebody, your intent is to kill them. Whether you do it or not is an act of God, really, a miracle. You know, if somebody survives,
right?
Why do you get, you know?" And I would say, why should anybody get credit for that? You didn't do it,
right? Well, but when it comes to people, it sounds like you're saying that you have your critics, you know, and
yeah, it's not that I don't really care about the critics. It's just that, like, when they question, like when people question your credentials, I'm sure that is not a fun thing.
I mean, my credentials are hard to, I've got clear credentials. I mean, you can't argue.
I know, but
we're not in the Cracker Jack box, you know.
I understand, but people will still.
I have a clear, you know, an extensive background. It's like, you know, when they read my resume when I go give a speech somewhere, it puts me to sleep. Like, I'm exhausted. It's long. I've done a lot, you know. So that doesn't happen. It's like the worst of them don't even do that. But what I think is this: when you get into a thing where somebody doesn't like you or whatever, the best approach is always to say, in my experience, is to be the one who says, "You know what? we're going to put this case ahead of feelings. I'm extending an olive branch. Once you extend an olive branch, if the other person doesn't take it and still doesn't like you, it shows who the wrong person is.
Right.
In other words, once you always extend an olive branch, and because once you do that, you can, one of you is the bigger person, and it ends. Because at the end of the day, you know, hatred of a person or arguing with a person, the consequences are eternal. I don't need that on my conscience with St. Peter in spitting distance. So, you know, as they say, so what I do is I make it a point to say to the person, I'm extending an olive branch. There's been a thing going on here. I'm sorry. Let's forget about it. You know, life is too short. And then if the other person is like, no, I'm in this, you know, I'm going to the mattress, you know, I hate you, I'm whatever, then they look ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because you've extended an olive branch. And I suppose there are some people that are, you know, they're just too primitive, you know, that they only know how to fight, you know, that's a thing. But, you know, I just kind of think that, you know, on the last day, you got to kind of account for yourself. And it's important to always bear in mind that if you've extended an olive branch, there's nothing more you can do. Even in the Bible, it says 3 times you try. If you've had a fight with somebody and you say you're sorry and you want to make up and they say no, try a 2nd time. Doesn't work, try a 3rd time. And after 3 times, you're not morally responsible anymore. Even the Bible says that. At some point, you step away because the person doesn't want it. But you, for your own conscience, you put it out there that you, and it's just a little bit of advice. But I kind of think that it has nothing to do really with the other letting the, you know, forgiveness or whatever for the sake of them. It's also for the sake of you, because anger destroys you.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Walking around with that, it's like giving the other person more of your time, more of your energy. And 9 times out of 10, when you look at the person that's leeching your energy, you're like, why are you worth this?
Well, that's kind of what it comes down to, is that they're not. But what
I don't know. You're clearly talking about some specific. I'm talking universally.
specific. I mean, there's just it's a bunch.
Well, okay. So I'm just saying, like, my guess is when people do that, it's because they feel hurt. So like that's why you always think like,
Sure.
What did I do to you? Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, you know, and then because people could work together. I don't know. I just don't like having enemies. I really don't.
It doesn't affect me enough. It doesn't affect me enough to not talk about it. Let's put it that way, because I'll still do it. And I feel like there are people that do enjoy listening and respect, you know, what I have to say. And
of
like,
course,
I respect what you have to say, and the people that are in the chat, I respect 99% of what people are saying, and our chats are usually very kind, very gracious, and intelligent, and I appreciate that, you know. But sometimes I wade into waters where there's people that are less than loquacious, and
you mean you could be a little like when you're not contained by the. Like if you're like, you could just kind of go, well, look, I don't know about any of that. I only know that I believe that in your heart you are a very kind soul, and I think sometimes you know, you have you can be funny and kind of put a front on whatever, but at the end of the day, you give people the shirt off your back. And I really believe that you do this show because you care about these victims. You identify with them. You've been there. And you know, I guess all I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, life is very short.
Yes.
And you know, and your brain, if you think of it like, you know, like a glass of water, like, you know, hatred takes up a lot of the space in it, in the jar, in the glass, you know, and it's just not worth it. Hatred is a terrible, terrible thing to feel. And you know, you look at so many of the things that we talk about, the crimes people commit, they happen because of hatred.
Yes.
You know, there are some people out there that are supposed to be battling the forces of darkness, and they're like examples of it. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Like, like be part of the light.
I'll tell you that I do not. I don't wish any ill will on anybody, even people that I don't, even people that I don't like. I wish the best for people, whatever situation that they're in. I hope the best turns out for them, even if they're hateful towards me. I promise you, I do not take any delight in anybody's demise ever. It doesn't matter. My own father, you know, I don't feel that way about him. I don't hate him. It's not a hatred. And I have very strong feelings. But I don't wish anybody any ill will ever.
I don't think you do.
No,
I think you defend yourself if you feel attacked.
Oh,
But-
I like to mix it up a little, but I'm not trying. And sometimes I've even done it where I feel like I may have hurt the person's feelings, and I'll be like, you know what? I don't want to do that again because I feel bad about it. I truly feel bad. Even if I didn't hurt their feelings and I think that I did, I'm like, you know what? I just don't want to do that anymore. You know, but if I feel attacked, yeah, I will definitely.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know how you feel. I'm a person that my time is very valuable. I really don't have much of it at all. Yeah. And if you had any idea what I do in a day, it's like scary, like how much I do in a day. And the thing is, you know, I come on these things, I don't get a dime. You know, this is all just voluntary, right? I do it because it's helping people. It's increasing the kind of professional level experience and knowledge in the pool. You know, like I started to do it because people from the Cold Case Foundation were doing it, and I thought it was like sort of upping the ante in the true crime discussion. And I feel, you know, it's a good deed, basically. And for that, I have occasionally had some people that disagree, you know, because they're fanatically obsessed with something, or they think they know more, or they think I'm not saying what I'm saying for a reason or whatever. And but my sense about things is like, you know, it's like Sherlock Holmes said, you know, it's I never seek to what was the line? I never seek to secure confidence from others. I have quite enough of my own. Well, it's like if you're confident in yourself, you don't care. Like what is somebody going to say about me? You know what I mean? Who cares?
Well, look, I liken it all, or not liking it, but I've been through things. Not this isn't a brag, because trust me, it's not by choice. I've been through things that will shake you to your very core and rock your sense of reality, and online beefs really don't get me that upset at all.
Well, I mean, have you had them? You've had beefs with people online?
Of course. Hell yeah.
You must do these things when I'm not looking, because as far as I see, you don't. But I just wish I.
Well, it's not like an ongoing, constant, everyday thing. No, not at all. I pick and choose.
Well, you know, the idea is that
Next time I'll let you know. I'll send you an email.
I just think that whatever you're talking about, whatever you're referring to, I think it probably is a thing where there's some misunderstanding that gets blown out of proportion. Like, it's best to just be like, you know what? Like, I don't know what I said, but I'm sorry. Like, let's move on with our lives, and then it ends. Mm-hmm. And because people feel disrespected, or they feel and then they get their guard up, you know, because not everybody is the kind of person that just lets things blow over. You know, they can't take it lying down. You know, it's like unbelievable. But that's how it is.
I don't stay mad about any. Like, I never have.
Some people can't take things lying down. They can't. I mean, you go down south of the Mason-Dixon line, you know, and there's still people who can't accept the Civil War was lost.
That's true.
They can't take it lying down. Like, it won't end in their head. Like, there's some people like that. It's just how it goes. They can't let things. They would be taking it lying down in their head. And so I just think, like, for another person's psyche, you just kind of go like, you know what? If you need that, you win. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, and stuff like this. Dr. Gary Josh literally has people who replay shows and make fun of it. That's true. It happens. That I don't mind so much, because then if you're not, if you're good at it, I'll applaud you. If you're not good at it, then it's just like,
well, you know, it's look, I mean, perhaps I draw too much on spirituality and whatever, but to me, I think that if you're doing good and you stand for goodness and you shed light where other people are trying to hide stuff or other people are kind of awful and you're just telling the truth, you're going to be hated. That's the way it goes. That's the essence of, I mean, you know, or like, you know, it happened to you know who. I mean, it's going to happen to us too. So I just kind of think that if it's going to happen, if it happened to Christ, I mean, it's not going to happen to us. So when you tell the truth and you're kind and whatever, and people don't like you, that's about them. Most people don't like it because it's an indictment of them. You know, like if you're very smart or you're, you know, it's like an indictment of their stupidity. If you're very kind, it's an indictment of their cruelty. If you have an opinion that's measured and based on education and experience, it's an indictment of their lack of it and their irrelevance. You know what I mean? And they get defensive of it. But you have to not be, you don't lord it over people. You just kind of always teach and be kind and give things away and love people. And eventually you win them over or you don't, but it's not your problem. And, you know, and so I just walk around kind of like I'm being kind, and you understand that or you don't. And do I get criticisms? Oh, yeah. Sure. Sometimes I look at what people say and I'm amazed. I mean, if I believed the things I read there, I mean, I would go live in a cave and like wool shirt eating locusts or something, you know. But and you know, it's horrible, the things that people say. Horrible. Sure. You ever get the attacks on your appearance?
A little bit.
Awful. Sometimes. Those are the worst. I don't know what people are thinking with that. And then you get the other kinds, the ones who say things that are like creeptastic.
Yeah, I mean, my appearance thing is, I don't really care. That doesn't bother me at all.
It's creepy. You get those kinds because that's like all they got, right? There's nothing. They can't say anything about your argument, so they have to, you know.
Yeah, if I get in a debate with somebody, I can tell you within probably 10 seconds if I've got them or not.
That's how it goes. I saw an argument one time between.
Really quick.
I saw an argument once between two people where one of them was making a political point, and it was very smart. You know, they were kind of citing the newspaper, whatever. And the other person didn't have an argument, and they said, "You know what? Your face is fat. You eat too much salt." Like, seriously? Like, that's your answer? But I think that's what happens to people is they just kind of run out, and then they go to like the low brain, and they just attack.
Sure.
And that's how you have to see it when you're getting attacked. You just kind of go like, can't you take this to a higher level? You know what I mean? Like, give me an argument on a higher level.
Yeah.
You know?
Usually when it goes there, you're just like, all right, whatever. You kind of, you know, like when the argument crumbles into hurling physical insults, you know, where you're like, you're fat, you're ugly, you're this, and you're just like, all right, I'm done with that.
First of all, I'm the wrong person to talk about that because I have never found. I don't really care for traditional appearances. I think they're more interesting. I think people are more interesting when they're a little not perfect.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that. Yeah.
So I never understood that. I think that's overrated. Like this whole thing of like with the Mangione thing, I saw somebody do a thing where they took an app and like put his face in it and tried to show like using AI like why people find him so attractive because there's like this perfect symmetry where you could like flip his face and whatever. And I'm looking, I'm like, that's boring.
It's stupid.
Like, I don't understand that. Like, what about all the other? What about the stuff that has to be there when a person withers and gets older, and you know all that's left of them is like their voice and their eyes and like their tree trunk hands, you know, and they're kind of like, don't they have to still be beautiful? And that's most of your life. I don't know. It's just kind of dumb. That's dumb. And then the attacks on it. I mean, you know, as Judge Judy. So what's that line of Judge Judy's? That looks spade, but stupid is forever. That's true, right? I don't know. A character is more attractive.
She terrifies me.
She does? Oh, I think she's awesome.
No, I mean, yeah, there's nothing. I'm just saying I would hate to be, I would
Yeah,
hate to be lambasted
what
by
the
her.
youth say? Isn't that what the youths say? She's a mood.
She's a something. I mean,
It kind of is a mood.
Yeah,
You know, have you ever gotten in a Judge Judy mood?
Yeah.
Where you just wanted to like tell somebody like it is, like just in a guttural way, like you.
Yeah, that's exactly how I get myself in trouble.
Or well, yeah, right. We all got a little Judge Judy, but the difference is that the appeal of Judge Judy, I think, is that she gives people the idea that good and evil could be summed up in 10 minutes. Like it's so black and white that in 10 minutes you could go, "You're the liar. You're telling the truth. You're out of here." And there's something about that that's very. It's like it's the satisfaction of like the puzzle snapping together perfectly.
I've gotten in arguments online before with many, not just online, and basically when it gets down to me, I go, you know what? I'm just going to talk turkey to you. Like, I think that you're an absolute moron, and I'm sorry that I feel that way. But
you said that to people?
I've said, of course.
I don't know if I would say that.
Well, you should. If it was how I felt, didn't you say be honest?
But isn't there a nicer way to say it?
No.
Can't you be like, you know,
how would you
sorry for you because
tell me how I would say I think that you're a moron in a nice way.
Well, what was the person saying to you that was so moronic?
I don't know. Just whatever it was moronic, and it just was like, okay, this needs to be said. I think that you're a moron for the things that you're saying. I don't agree with it. I think it's off base. I think it's out of touch. And you probably ate paint chips as a child, and that's no fault of your own, but it's really affected your life, you know, in a drastic way. And, you know, your parents probably should have had the house, you know, scraped and repainted, but they didn't. And it's not their fault.
When you do that, it's too obvious that how much they've hurt you. It's much better to act like
that to me. That's just, I just enjoy doing that. It's
all right. I mean, I could see if somebody, you know, has pissed you off that much, but I guess I would just say to the person, we're just not speaking the same language here. You know, you're on a very different plane in terms of where you're attacking me. If you want to have an intellectual debate about it, you have to be open to the idea that I might know something you don't know, and you might know something I don't know. But if you're going to dismiss me out of hand, just, you know, then this isn't going to work. You know, I think maybe the point is not to get to the middle. If your point is that you just want to hate me, this isn't going to work. You know, or you
say, hey,
moron, and you ate paint chips, right?
Moron, this is moronical, and I don't like you.
Maybe, but at the end of the day,
you ever told somebody that you don't like them?
Yeah, well,
never.
I mean, have I ever told someone I didn't like them?
Yes.
Yeah, but they were usually somebody that was doing something that was so cruel and so unjust that I felt I had to stand up for somebody by telling that person. One time I was watching somebody just berate someone in public, and the person like was totally helpless, and I said to the person, I know that it makes you feel big to do this to this person, but my suspicion is that you're knocking the legs out from underneath them because you know they could do a lot better than you. You know, that kind of thing. It's like I would say something like that, but I wouldn't say, you know, you have a face like the wolf of God, you know, like you look like you fell out of an ugly tree, you know, and hit every twig on the way down. You know, I wouldn't say something like that. I might think it.
I was at a basketball game.
Say it, yeah.
I was at a basketball game years, you know, when my kids were in high school, which was just a couple of years back. And there was this guy who was just
so funny in the audience. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They're like just love. They eat up this.
It's just a notorious.
Why it's interesting to them, but yeah. So you were
it's a notorious jerk to many people. He had screwed a bunch of people over in life. He had this horrible reputation. I ended up having to sit next to him, and I had like a sort of an interaction with him, but it wasn't like anything serious. But he kept trying to talk to me during the game, you know, and I would just kind of go, you know, yeah, yeah. And I kind of give him a thumbs up or whatever. We're sitting right next to each other. And he goes, you're not very talkative, like that, like kind of. And I just I leaned towards him and I said, I don't like you.
I mean, at least speak your heart.
And he didn't, and we didn't say another word.
But why would you want to go across your life, which is going to be very brief, having anybody that you don't like? Don't you think that even the most awful people, if you took the time, have something to them?
No.
Something redeemable in them? Not anything?
No.
But you and that person have in common something. I mean, even if it's just your misanthropy.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't like him. I don't want to talk to him. But the thing was,
he makes them interesting that they like.
But this was going on for like
I would have been best friends with Scrooge. I would have loved him. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't have wanted him to convert, and dance around and be kind to Bob Cratchit. I just would have been interested to know how he became Scrooge. He would interest me because he's so nasty. That
he didn't interest me. He was bugging me, really, because I was trying to watch the game and I didn't like him. So to put an end to the entire conversation, I just said, hey, I don't like you. And then he went, that's not the first time I've done that either. I mean, it got the conversation over with.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm not judging you for having that reaction because, of course, it's totally human. And I've had moments where, believe me, I want to tell
you lie to the guy. Hey, buddy, I really like you.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I just think that there is an art to saying that most people are mean because the center of them is that they were hurt. I mean, that it is important to me to see people that way because I really don't think most people, with a few exceptions I've met, and I mean even in the world of offenders, that just came out of the womb horrible. But most of them, it's like they were idealists once and they got burned and they just got really, really hard, and I'm not saying there aren't people who do very evil things. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not making an excuse for them. But I'm saying that in even those people, they've done things like say, oh, I'll get that for you. I'll open the door. I'll give you a cup of water. Oh, how are you? You know what I'm saying? And there's a humanity in them.
If that same guy, we walked out and he got ran over, I would help him. I would. Me not liking him has nothing to do with him. Me not being a caring soul. I would help him, but I don't want to talk to you, and I don't have to.
Different. Forgiving is different. Forgiving is different than talking to somebody. Talking to somebody sometimes just going back for a second helping of abuse. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about not letting the poison of your hatred of them kill you when they're not even in the room. That's not necessary. You're giving them more than they even deserve. The person doesn't merit any more, not even one more second of your time, And it's the same thing in spiritual terms. Thank God, what we're taught is that the things that we've done wrong are gone forever. They're healed and they're over. Didn't I ever tell you my favorite story about we have a saint in Catholicism, Mary Margaret Alacoque. She was the person associated with the Sacred Heart devotion. The famous image of the Sacred Heart, right? And it's fascinating. She was a kind of a neurotic, strange person, but she was having these very vivid, intense visions of Jesus, with holding his heart, with light shooting out and the whole thing. And this was happening in France at a time when they were beginning to understand psychology, right? And so she went to her confessor, and of course he thought she was just a sick person who was having visions. He didn't take it, he was one of those people who thought those things only happen in old days, there's something wrong with you. And he was doing confession with her, and he didn't believe her. And this particular priest had done some horrible thing in his life before he became a priest. And so he said to her, here's what you do. The next time you see Jesus, ask him what Father so-and-so did years ago before he became a priest. And if he tells you, I'll believe you're talking to him. So she goes and nonchalantly comes back and says she had another one of her apparitions. And he says, okay, what did Jesus say that I did years ago before I became a priest? And she said, he said to tell Father, I don't remember. So,
yeah,
that's it. That's the point. It's over. And there's something about that story when you think about it. It's so beautiful that if you really grasp it, it brings a tear to your eye, you know? Because I mean that's the nature of love. It gobbles it up. It's over. It's just throw it into the ocean of love and let it wash away. And the other thing is, if you mean kindness to people and they take it the wrong way and they get hurt and whatever, don't tell them to screw off. Say, I'm really sorry that you feel that way. I really mean that from the heart. That was a misunderstanding. I'd never want to hurt anybody.
I'll work. I need to work on that for sure. Honestly.
That's beautiful. But anger and that obsession with that can be a cross. You know, you got to work on it.
People get frustrated with me sometimes because I can be so sarcastic and dry where it's like, they're like, you don't even care. And I go, you're right. I don't care. You know?
But there's nothing wrong with being justice driven, right? Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. Nothing wrong with that. Oh, look at that. Awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is such a thing as having a besetting sin. We all have one, right? I've got to work on some, you know, and so you got to work on wrath.
I hear you. All right, Dr. Gary.
All right. Well, anyway, I think that was.
I had a great time. This is a great conversation all around.
I kind of forgot that all these poor people were listening to that.
Yeah, me too. Kind of. It's only been 3.5 hours too.
Dear Lord. Well, maybe the audience can tell us if they got something out of that, and then I feel better that they all listened to that.
We've had
400 to 500 everybody all night. Huh?
We've had 400 to 500 people all night.
What would be really ironic is if tomorrow somebody like takes the footage of me saying this to you and like mocks it.
I hope they do.
Puts like funny hats on me or calls me a moron or something, and you know, and then I'll look like a hypocrite.
Yeah, and then you'll be like, that son of. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's the idea, right? You know, but I hope not. But I hope that people could tell the sincerity of it. The other thing I promised someone I was going to say is, you know, sometimes I can be very welcoming and whatever, and then I like encourage people to reach out when they've got personal stuff going on. I've had people call and write and whatever, or that just want to talk about crime or whatever. And the problem is that I really shouldn't do that because I just don't have the time to answer, and it can really hurt people's feelings. I've discovered because the reality is that I get like maybe 2,000 messages a week at this point. And from all over the place, you know, work related, people that are in the base of people that read things I write, that see me in TV or on TV, or have questions or consult, or cops or whatever. It's just it's not possible. And so I have to apologize for that, because these are really kind people that are writing, and I don't want anybody to feel that way. So from the heart, I apologize for that. If anybody has written and there's no answer, or the answer is curt or whatever, there's just unfortunately only so much time to go around. Do you get around to answering all the messages, Josh?
I try. I really do try. I get a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I appreciate all of them, but yeah, I try to respond to as many people as I can, depending on what they say.
But I can't read all that stuff. I mean, because I also have other work and things that like each of them a thing where you're getting like dozens of messages. You know, I mean, it's just not possible. Yeah. And eventually I try, you know, but it's like a month later. I just saw today somebody asked me to participate in like a conference, but like they sent it to me in November, like, and I found it today. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not possible. And so I really want to apologize for that. And I hope that I didn't say anything out of line in our conversation today.
To who?
To you.
I like you.
Well, thank you. I like you too.
You can say what I respect your opinion.
Weirdest moment of the evening, but thank
I
you.
respect every. No, I respect. Like I respect. Yeah, you didn't say anything out of line, man. Our conversations on the air are a lot like they are off the air. I respect what you have to say. I take everything that you say and
right, and that's mutual. And in all seriousness, I think it's very sweet that you're so, you see. But that's what I'm saying, is that underneath whatever anybody is judging you for,
yeah, I'm almost too open about
you
stuff.
can see the heart. You can see the heart in you there.
Like really, still, I need to a little. But we learned those lessons the hard way too. All right, Dr. Gary, we're out of here. I appreciate it, and we'll do a
right.
We'll schedule a show. We'll talk about it, and I'll give
and watch the show. It's called Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker tapes. It's really great. It's 2 parts, and I guess what I would say is there's 2 things I'm going to ask each of you to do from the heart for Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate, if you celebrate anything. Just 2 things. 1, please, if you can, remember the poor, remember the homeless.
Amen.
Give something to them. I personally love the Bowery Mission, as I always say, in New York, but there are wonderful places, and literally for $2, you could feed a person Christmas dinner. Literally. I mean, give $10 and 5 people are going to eat, and some of them will be children. So think about that. And the second thing is, think of somebody that you love, that you've lost touch with, or a person that you've had a fight with, or that you haven't talked to in a while, and purposely go out of your way to call them up and talk to them and maybe say you're sorry and heal. If you do those 2 things, if you remember the poor and you heal with somebody, or you reconnect with somebody, it would have been a very, very, very good Christmas or a good holiday season and a good way to end the year. And if enough people did that, it would become like a big, giant force field of goodness, and I really beg of you to do that.
We're going to go serve dinner at the. Yeah, but it wasn't. Here's the thing. It wasn't my idea. It was my kids' idea. They said, "Hey, you come," and I said, "All right." I've never done that before.
So the next time people are making fun of you, remember they're making fun of somebody who raised kids.
Well, if they show up and I see them in the line, I'll give a little.
Well, you may, and if you do, feed them.
Okay, I won't spit in their food. I promise.
Just remember, at the Last Supper, Jesus washed Judas's feet.
That's right.
Right.
I've never done anything like that before, and when they brought it up to me, I was like, "This is actually, I think this would be cool. This would be great. I think we'd get a lot out of it."
People are saying that you should take the section where I gave the advice and make it into a short, so that people see it and do it.
Just have my face all red. No.
But I think it is true that if people hear that and do it, if one person does it, if one of these people, one person gives a few bucks to the poor and heals with somebody, the whole thing was worth it. The whole conversation was worth it. And it's a beautiful bookend to a conversation about Ramirez. Ramirez is what happens when love isn't there, when it dies, when it hurts. Right. Evil. That's what the point is of me talking to you about hatred. That's the result. That's the exaggerated result of evil. That's hell on earth. You could also have heaven on earth, and to have heaven on earth, you've got to give. So that's what I'm saying. Like, forgive someone and give. Amen. Anyway, all right.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks, there it was. It was a great show. We went 3 hours and 40 minutes, our longest show to date. Justin always teases me and he says, "Oh, Josh can't go more than," well, look looky here. God bless you guys. I really appreciate you being here. I've had a fantastic time. Great calls, great conversation as always. And we'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Yeah, I believe, and I'll bring this. I always fill in Dr. Gary while we're live on the air, but hopefully we're doing an episode of The Witness Box. Hopefully this week, if everybody's schedules line up for it. So that'll be great as well. So.